All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening. All right, we have a select board, a FinCom, a clerk, and a moderator, and voters tonight. Thanks for turning out. Good evening. For the record, my name is Dennis Reap, and I'm the elected town moderator. I hereby call for the reconvening of the adjourned session of annual town meeting of the town of Boxborough from last night. We've completed the business of up through Article 25, with the exception of Article 15, which was laid on the table in good faith last evening with the intent to take it from the table to resume it here tonight. The same rules and procedural motions that we passed on Monday night still apply. And let's see, just an ask from LCTV. If you're at the microphones speaking and need to adjust to suit your height, it will rotate about the top of the stand, so please do so as opposed to taking it out. I think that's it for introductions or introductory remarks. Motion, Ms. Hilberg.
Sure. I move to take the motion on Article 15 from the table.
Moved and seconded. That's not debatable. It takes a majority. If you recall, we laid 15 on the table last night with the intent of bringing it back tonight. All in favor of removing from the table, raise your green cards. All opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by majority. We're back to discussion under Article 15, which had comments from the floor. Microphone to my left, please.
Jennifer Barrett, 55 Whitcomb Road. Shall I start from the beginning? Okay. The summary in Article 15 refers to an authorization made in 2021 to expend $120,000. The breakdown from that warrant included needs for software and consulting and funding for 200 personal property account and 1,000 residential properties for inspection and valuation. At the time, the assessor proposed to do another 1,000 parcels on their own during office time. Boxborough has 2,500 parcels that are essentially taxable. That article should have gotten through the entire town, fairly short order. DOR requires the town to take a revalue every parcel once every 9 years. This was in anticipation of our 5-year reval, which is looking at all classes. I asked how much had been spent out of the $120,000 that was authorized in 21. There's about $1,000 left, and the progress has been ongoing since then. It's taken 3 years to spend that $120,000. 2 years ago, the town meeting authorized $30,000 to raise and appropriate. The verbiage in that warrant article is exactly the same as it is in this warrant. Last year, the exact same article, raise and appropriate, $30,000. So here we are 3 times later asking for $30,000 under our tax dollars for valuations that should have been completed under that first article. I'd like to know the status of those valuations. How many were completed by consultants? How many have been completed by the assessor? And why we need another $30,000 when the FY24 funds, or the current year's funds are not spent. I did look back. The first $30,000 was returned to free cash and closed. So there's one block of $30,000 still available. Follow-up question after that is there an open contract to encumber that $30,000 that we could then potentially rescind this motion and pass over?
Mike, are you prepared to answer this one tonight?
We're going to ask our town assessor to come up and address these questions, since this is the department that she manages. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So, yes, there is $1,713.50 remaining in that article. To keep up with the required property inspections so that the town doesn't fall behind again, the parcel cleanup was 6 years, which was 1,800 parcels worth of inspections upon my arrival. None of that was done before I arrived. We have completed 500 parcels up to today's date for FY25. And bringing that number of commercial industrial properties, a big number of those forward, because knowing that the new growth was going to be very minimal. So I pulled those forward and made that part of the 500, hopefully to gain the new growth. To avoid another $120,000 emergency revaluation request like we had in 2021, the DOR expects us to have this money available, showing that it is being contributed constantly with an ongoing motion, so that all these cyclicals are being done, the inspections are being done, so that we are able to set a tax rate. When I walked in to the office in fiscal year 23, DOR was in my room my first week and said, "You guys are not going to get certified, plain and simple." They knew about the 120. They knew that you guys all rushed to hurry up and get it on the voted in so that they would see it. They're pretty savvy. Pardon me. And what was brought to my attention was how many parcels were not inspected. So I did my due diligence, and I worked with a contractor group to bring us up to par and hopefully bring us forward, so that if, for whatever reason, you don't have an assessor in your seat, you're not sitting in this position of not having a tax rate certified. If you don't have a tax rate certified tonight, us all sitting here is moot, plain and simple. Simply because the state expects the work to be spread out over multiple years, they don't want to see one big hunk of money being contributed into an account for the reval. They frown upon it. Slow and steady equals the results, as we have seen. To make sure that the town can continue setting the tax rate on time, because this is not extra spending, it's part of a plan already in motion. So to direct your questions, you wanted a breakdown of how many each did what. I am not prepared to answer that this evening. And your next question?
Do you have a current contract for?
We do have contracts currently in work, yes.
So the $30,000 for this current year is under contract?
Again,
Will
this
it be
is an
spent by June
ongoing,
30th?
this is an ongoing thing that the DOR wants to see. Typically, what would happen would be, if you have an older article, you're going to spend under this being the way it's set up. You're going to spend the older article first and get rid of it off the table so that you're not working with so many. You're trying to get rid of one and then go to the next article. They're going to see those articles and they're going to say, okay, Boxborough has been appropriating their money the way they're supposed to, the way we want to see, meaning showing that we have a plan in order, which that I had to also note to them, what is the plan? The plan was, when the first article ever came in front of you for $30,000, was that we were going to do this on a yearly basis, doing our part. That's showing DOR you're doing your part, so that when they go to certify us, they're seeing that. And not only that, those funds have to be into the, in their view, 2 full fiscal years prior to the certification. So it's not like if I wasn't here and all of a sudden your next fiscal your next certification is in 2029, your funds have to be available on 2027, fiscal year 2027, by June 30th. And if it's not showing in that by that date, DOR can stop certification. I don't want that to happen. I walked into that for you guys. I'm making sure that doesn't happen. So that is why, instead of having the lump sum of 120 in 2027, it was decided to spread it out, so it was an easy 30,000 every year. Next question.
What is the breakdown for the 29,500 that's in your current budget, not part of this article?
What do you mean?
There's $29,500 approximately in this year's current consulting budget. Is that for valuations as well?
I don't have my budget in front of me. I don't know. The 29, do you have the budget? If it's consulting, the 29,500 for consulting, I think was taken away. She's looking it up. However, that is for commercial properties. Commercial properties have been, I hate to say it, but those are our biggest abatements that come through. You get these tax reps that come and send abatements in. They don't even know Boxborough. They have not a clue. And there's big, what's that? Patriots and Catalysts. So that is the consulting, yes. That is the software in that is for the software of the database that we use, if it's Patriot and Catalyst.
That's in addition to the software in your budget, I believe.
Again, the 30,000 is being used for the cyclicals and for everything else. Now, when I arrived, they had put that article on the floor, and they voted the 120,000. Later, after, it was probably early '24, I found, in the mess, I found one of the assessors that apparently was working to get Vision. We have Patriot, which is now called Catalyst. They were working to get Vision in there from the notes he had left behind buried under paperwork. With that being said, that's fine. I used to work for Vision. I know how it works, so yeah, of course I'd want Vision in here. However, we're in the middle of the certification. DOR will not let you do that. What happened was when we were going for the certification, I didn't have that ability to do that. However, the Patriot Catalyst software was obsolete, and they were no longer going to support it whatsoever. So with that being said, we could do an upgrade, and noted several fiscal years, a couple fiscal years anyhow, that the first year, for the fiscal year, we got the software for free, the upgrade. So there was savings there as well. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not looking at it like that, but DOR wants to make sure that everything is incorporated together. So, if anything,
I do have a comment. I'm just waiting for you to finish.
Sure, go ahead.
So you did not upgrade the software to Vision,
No.
which was the intention of that $120,000. So town meeting authorized that change to Vision under that article in 2021, and the value of that, the cost of that was inside that 120 in addition to consulting services for evaluations. So if that upgrade hasn't been done, then the staff has not satisfied the terms of that article as authorized. There was a breakdown in
Jennifer,
there
thank
for.
you. Time's up.
So true.
Mike?
May I address that, Moderator?
If you have a direct answer to a
I
question.
do have a direct answer. Again, it wasn't an upgrade. With Vision, it's not an upgrade. With Vision, it's a full conversion. And that alone is quite a bit of money. I couldn't envision how 120,000 would do a conversion as well as everything else that DOR was looking at. I didn't see anything status post the upgrade to Patriot in that article for Vision specific. It said upgrades to the system. That would have been a full conversion.
Microphone to my right, please. Name and address.
Gary Kushner, 158 Flag Hill Road. Comment and a question. Comment is to the audience. The capital plan for Boxborough does have every year $30,000 set aside for this action item. So it's been there for the last few years, and it will be there in perpetuity. The question, I heard the previous speaker make a comment about the $30,000 2 years ago was rolled into free cash. That caught my attention, because the only way to do that is through town meeting, and I think we would have picked up on that. So is that a true statement or not a true statement?
You're asking me?
I'm asking anybody who can answer the question. I don't think you can. Do we still have 30,000 sitting, 60,000 essentially sitting in the funds?
Is there anybody here that can answer that in short order?
While Hunghwa is looking that up, I can answer not the dollar value, but just the process of turning back money to free cash. I found out more than a year after I was here that Boxborough's expectation that any money going from an article back to free cash was that it would come back to town meeting for a vote like the vote we had last night to return the $29,000. The community that I came from, that was not the practice. So there isn't, law that says you must do it that way. It was, if you had money that wasn't going to be used for that particular use, between the town administrator and the accountant, you would turn it in, so it's not sitting there. But I learned, as I mentioned, more than a year after being here, that the expectation was that it would come back here for a vote. That's why we saw it voted last night. I mention that because, you're talking about, I think, more than 3 years ago. I wasn't here, but whoever was here at the time, the previous accountant, the previous town administrator, may have returned that. It is possible that could have happened. I think we have a number.
The 2 article, it's still in the warrant article. It's not in free cash.
Okay, thank you.
It's still in the warrant article.
All right, so Gary, that answers your question, correct? Yes. Okay, microphone to my left, please.
Steve Jeffries, 286 Sergeant Road. So I'm a little confused as to sort of the go-forward plan for funding this. As I've been hearing, the article summary talks about using taxation to fund this. And I just heard a moment ago that it's in the capital plan, $30K a year to continue this activity. And then there's been some talk about free cash and funds returned to it. So I would appreciate it if someone would succinctly explain how this is being funded. And I'm curious, is this a one and done, Article 15? We do this and we'll never see this again, or is because there's some other means for which the funds will fund this necessary activity? So I would appreciate it if somebody could clear that up for me.
Tony, can you answer that for the FinCom?
Yeah, so because it's in the capital plan, it still has to be raised and appropriated through town meeting. So it's the capital plan is just a plan of what we're going to spend each year on various items coming forward. This is in the plan every year as a recurring item. It's still raised and appropriated.
So then, Tony, if it's in the capital plan, would it come back to us again next year to vote another 30K raised?
That's the idea. This one comes up every year in the capital plan.
Okay, so we can expect to see this again?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, speaker to my right, name and address, please.
Cheryl was there first.
Oh,
Do you
okay,
wanna
yeah.
take her?
Mark, go ahead.
Oh.
Okay, it's a short one.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the fact that we have to get our tax rates set and how DOR is, on your case, and I'm glad that you're addressing it. But I think over the last 3 years, 4 years maybe, we had a great deal of information on the assessor's field cards that was available online. And, legal references for properties, building permit history of properties, all that information seemed to have vanished. And now I don't want to bug you and call you every time I have a question. I'd prefer to see it on the card. Would this help?
Hello?
Yeah.
Mark, great question. I would have to investigate that further. And the reason being is because of the fact it would cost additional funds, and I would have to find out whether or not that would be prudent to go that way. However, please, that's what I'm there for. If you need a card, that's what it's about.
How many properties do we have in town? Could I get all of them?
2,713.
Awesome.
It might take us a while.
All right, Cheryl, you're up if you've been waiting.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was trying to find the ATM 2021 that Jennifer was referring to. I just want to make sure, she raised some concerns. I want to make sure that the funds from what was approved, the software conversion in 21, the usage of those funds stayed within the four corners of the article and were not used for other intended purposes, as well intended as it could be.
I don't know if we'll be able to, this is drifting from the four corners of raise and appropriate
I
the
know, but
$30,000.
Jennifer raised concerns that, that previously approved funds may have been used for things other than what, and then we're looking for more money to address a need that, I know that it was an S show from 21 forward to what we're finally getting back on board here, and I know the players involved. But again, this is a democratic process, and we need to ensure that the functions of our officers stays within the intent of the articles that this body approves.
Okay, well, we're talking about Article 15 on the warrant for this town meeting. If there's someone here, FinCom, our finance director, our
Right.
administrator, if they could answer this question quickly, I would be fine with them answering it for you, because it is of interest.
It was difficult.
But if you're asking for forensic accounting for something from 3 or 4 years ago.
I just
and
need
it
to
can't be
make
done
sure
tonight.
that the article, again, this was rather hard, to Mark's point, it was rather hard to find from 2021. Article 18, software conversion, personal property update and valuation services, met the criteria for the use of within the four corners of this funding.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
if I might suggest, if Jennifer can put her concerns into writing, so that, because that was a lot to follow. Even Mike and I are like, what direction do we just
Right.
go in? We talked about a lot. Put it into an email. We will look into it. Worst case, you're not going to get an answer till special town meeting in November, but we're happy to discuss it. We could take it up at a select board meeting. We agree this is important, but, we also trust that the finance committee has been watching what's been closed out, what hasn't, and that, we believe in everybody's honesty and ethics in managing their warrant articles. But let us look into it, and we'll give either a report at the select board meeting, or we'll bring it back in November.
So then, I can't do this because I'm at the microphone asking questions, but would the select board consider a potential amendment to entail this article that pending a review? Or words to that
It's
effect?
not our decision, it's their decision.
Yeah, so there was, a point of order. Someone mentioned passing over. The article's on the floor, it's being discussed, it can't be passed over. It can be defeated, because we will vote in favor or against at some point when we stop discussing it. That's something that can be done.
No.
Last night, we laid it on the table. You could lay something on the table, and then not take it off.
Right.
But
I mean-
you need a 2/3 to do that, so clearly there's a choice here of motions on the floor. It's been moved, seconded, we're discussing it, and there will be a vote on it at some point.
So to the chair's point, though, if someone in this body considered amending this article by adding a caveat to the end of the article pending reviewing,
That's
'cause I would
that's
prefer
beyond the
not to
scope. That's beyond the scope of what's up here. That's adding an action that's not in the warrant.
okay.
Let's see, Rich, I think you were at the mic first, so we'll go to the
Okay,
right.
Rich Gazzardi, 92 Reed Farm Road. So I have a simple question, I think. So this was part of the financial non-capital consent agenda. It was held, so we're debating the specific article, but it was part of the non-capital consent agenda. And I thought I heard, Tony, you say, or I thought I heard somewhere that this is a capital item, which is why it's showing up as a warrant article. And I guess my thought is if it's, it'd be great if this was just buried in the budget. I understand, not buried, but included in the budget, because I understand what this is, but I'm not, is it capital or not? And
All right, so Gary Kushner of the Capital Committee is here, and maybe he can answer the question?
go for it.
First of all, this is not capital, but we call it the capital plan. And what it does is provides the town with guidance. If you look in the warrant, you'll see a 5-year projection. We put things in there that are, again, not capital, but recurring costs. For example, $30,000 every year. Trying to think of some other items in there that are not capital. But the idea is we want to show the town recurring costs and things that we'll be spending more than X amount of dollars. I think we're at $20,000 now for capital. But we used to put carpet replacement in there and painting. For example, painting the library would be in the capital plan. Things like that.
Okay.
Big expenses that the town needs to know it's coming in the future.
Okay, so it's
But it's not in capital.
in the capital plan, but it's not capital. Okay, thank you.
And the capital plan does not tell you how we're going to fund items. That's what we do here.
Microphone to my left, please. Yeah,
Christine?
you can rotate that down if you grip it toward this. There you go.
Christine Marlowe, 880 Depot Road. I just want clarification. It sounded like a couple years ago, there was 30,000. They said it wasn't used, so it went into free cash, but then it really didn't, and it's in there. So can we just clarify all that, and how much is available to the assessor right now? And if we still need this 30,000?
Mike or Kristen, can you answer that?
So what I heard our finance director, Hung-Hwa, say is that the funds are still in the warrant articles. They were not returned to free cash. And what we'll do is we'll validate that. You know, that's part of Jennifer giving us a really good list of questions, and we can just tick right through them and validate that everything was done correctly. And if we need to fix something, we can do it in November at the special town meeting. But what I heard her say is the money is where it's supposed to be. I don't know where the information came that said that warrant article was closed to free cash. That's part of the investigation we're going to have to do. But to our knowledge and the books that we're looking at, it is sitting in the article where it's supposed to be.
Okay, so there is 30,000 already there that hasn't been used, but you, as the assessor, feel we need another 30,000 on this vote to get you to where you need for the end of the year? Or if that 30,000 is in there, then if we vote yes on this and you don't really need it, then you won't take the money? I'm just trying to clarify.
No, no worries. Good question. Good question. The thing is this is ongoing.
Okay.
So typically when we have money and we vote money, it's for something, and that's it. You know, it's done. Is what we all look at. This is not like that. This is a continuous motion that happens, and it has to happen in order for us to stay compliant within the Department of Revenue's regulations and Mass General Law. So we have to continue doing this. In order to do something, and I guess I'm going to put it in the most simplest way I can. To keep the car wheels moving, you have to put gas in the car, or the car goes nowhere.
Right.
The DOR doesn't want to see us like that. They don't want to see a repeat of 21. They don't want to see it. It's been made quite clear to my predecessors. I have a very good rapport with our DOR representative, and like I said, my first meeting of her was, "You're not getting certified." That's horrifying for a brand new assessor. Horrifying. I don't want us put in that position.
Right.
If we don't get certified, there's no money. There's none. There's no departments. There's no police department. That's fine. I don't want to take that chance. Is the money's always going to be brought down to zero? in that one fiscal year? No, because as you get closer to the fiscal year of certification, the monies are going to be higher. So this year, for example, well, let me put it to, just in 23 and 24 alone, I spent over $75,000. Boom, in those 2 years. Wow. 24, I don't have the number in front of me. I think it was, I'm at 12,000 right now. I mean, 20, what are we, 25? 25, we're at 12,000. So it can fluctuate. So am I going to use it all in one swoop? No, but that's not the intent of what DOR has either. They want to see ongoing progress, and if we can't show that, we won't be certified.
Okay, Kelly, is it fair to say that, and FinCom helped me out here, that we had to do that $120,000 giant article because we were behind? And then my recollection is that we've been doing the $30,000 a year to spread it out, to demonstrate to the state that we're committed to doing this correctly and over time, so that we don't have to hit you with $120,000 every 4 years. That's my remembrance of why we do it $30,000 a year and why we put $30,000 in the capital plan, which is kind of like our long-range budget. But if FinCom could just validate my memory, because you know how it goes.
My time, so I've got no idea.
It's not before my time.
Or Maria's time.
No, it's not. Nothing seems to be before my time. I'm feeling a little old. Actually, Kristen, that 120,000 was supposed to be used for a conversion, not entirely. Part of it was supposed to go for a conversion. Part of it was supposed to go to catch up after the conversion. I'm not. You need to have legal look at this with respect to how was it spent, if it was spent properly. There is money in there for conversion. The reason that we continue to fund this in an article year after year for the $30,000 is because if we don't and we put it in the budget, on June 30th, all the monies that is in the budget that's left rolls into free cash, which means if Kelly doesn't use the $30,000 in one fiscal year, it rolls back into free cash, and then the next year, she won't have use of that money. We have to then rebudget it. If we put it in an article, Kelly can use that money continuously. So when she runs out of the money from the article from 2022, she can start using the money from 2023, and it doesn't roll back into free cash. Eventually, the hope is she catches up, and we don't have to fund a $30,000 article. But right now, we're doing it so the money doesn't roll back into free cash, because if that happens, we've essentially taxed everybody, and the money just goes into free cash. And that doesn't make sense, because if we're going to tax you, we want to make sure we're using the money appropriately. We have a lot of funds. The police have a fund, the fire department for injuries. There's different funds that we have. That's how we fund them, so that it doesn't roll back into free cash by putting it in an operating budget. Does that clear that up a little bit?
Yes, thank you very much.
Microphone to my right, please.
Susan Bach, 59 Burroughs Road. I move the question.
It's been moved and seconded that we stop discussion on this article and vote now. This is just a vote to stop the discussion. We need 2/3 to pass. It's non-debatable. All in favor of stopping discussion now, raise your green cards. Lower your cards. All opposed. That carries by 2/3. We're now voting on the motion on Article 15, as you see on the screen. All in favor of motion on Article 15, raise your green cards. All opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by majority. All right, we are now on to the next set of consent agenda articles. These are the capital consent. These have been unanimously recommended by the Select Board and FinCom and have been identified in advance as items that would likely pass without debate and are intended to be acted upon as a unit. So as we have with the other consent agendas, I'll go through each article one at a time. If anybody wants to pull an article from the consent agenda, just yell out, hold in a loud voice, or if you have a soft voice, run to the microphone and say hold, and we'll take that one out of the consent and talk about it individually. All right, let me get to, so yeah, when I get to the end with number 35, we'll have a motion on all those that remain in the consent, and then we'll go back. So, We're starting with Article 26, Department of Public Works, new 2026 heavy-duty pickup truck. Hold on Article 26. Article 27, Fire Department Emergency Response Vehicle. Hold on Article 27. Article 29, Fire Department Utility Terrain Vehicle. Oh, 28, I'm sorry. Article 28, Fire Department Personal Protection Equipment. Okay, Article 29, I heard a hold already. Article 30, Town Museum Exterior Doors. Article 31, Town Museum Paint Exterior Windows. Article 32, Town Museum Roof. Hold on Article 32. Article 33, installation of a swap shed at the transfer station. Hold on Article 33. Article 34, information technology, hardware upgrades and replacements. Article 35, Sergeant Memorial Library, altering the interior space. Hold on Article 35. All right, so to review, we had holds on Article 26, Article 27, Article 29, Article 32, Article 33, Article 33, and then Article 35. So remaining on consent are Articles 28, 30, 31, 34, and that's it. So when you're prepared with the right numbers, Kristen, we'll have a
Yep,
motion
I have the
on
same
the
ones.
consent.
Okay, I move to approve the capital consent agenda warrant articles 28, 30, 31, and 34 in accordance with the funding sources and amounts set forth in the May 12th, 2025 annual town meeting warrant under articles 26 through 35 respectively.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Raise your green cards. Cards down, all opposed? That carries by majority. Motion under Article 26, Select Board, please.
So I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $70,000 to purchase and equip a new heavy-duty pickup truck, including all costs incidental and related thereto.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation from the Select Board.
Let me pull it up real quick. Oh, thank you. Okay. So the Select Board clearly unanimously recommended, so it's on the consent agenda. But our current F-250 truck is pretty close to the end of life, and we had made a commitment to purchasing the hybrid vehicles. However, that was not possible for this truck since it will be used for plowing or an auxiliary vehicle for plowing snow at times.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends unanimously the truck was on the capital plan.
And recommendation from the Capital Committee. Okay, discussion from the floor. We'll go to the right first by selection.
I'm just curious because you mentioned that.
Name and address, please.
Oh, sorry, Chris Dowdy, Liberty Square Road. The select board just mentioned that a hybrid was, intended but wouldn't be appropriate. And I'm just curious why, or like the F-150 Lightnings, the 150 Lightnings, I thought would have the same capability. I'm just curious.
We'd like to invite Ed up to answer that question since it's his request and he's the expert.
Good evening, everybody. When I first went out to get quotes for the trucks, all our vehicles are F-250s and bigger, and I did speak with the gentleman who just to get a quote from him, and he says that the F-250s do not come in hybrids, and he wouldn't recommend it for plowing because of the wear and tear it puts on the vehicle and that complete pounding it takes when the weight is on that. And they don't make anything in an electric vehicle for an F-250.
Okay, no, fair enough. Just curious.
Okay, microphone to my left. Jennifer, are you waiting in line ahead? I think Jennifer was here first. Yeah, point of order, we don't have the brown chairs because we've broken the room partially down, so we'll have to roll with the lines as best we can here.
I just want to double check, F-250 or F-350 is your intention?
250.
250?
Yep.
And is this, the reason I held this was because I wanted to make sure that I wanted to see the actual motion. The heading says that it's for a 2026 heavy-duty pickup. I wanted to make sure that the motion was not going to restrict the purchasing process to a 2026. I'm satisfied, thank you.
Phone to my right, please.
Griffin Berman, 318 Common Hill Road, apartment E2. So the intention is there, you already have in mind a type of Ford vehicle.
A vehicle, it doesn't have to be a Ford.
Yeah. What are the parameters, like which brands are you guys considering and which are kind of off the table?
There aren't any. We usually, we're allowed to go off the state bid list, which we don't have to use the process of going to bids because the state has already done that for us on their website. And what I've always learned is that it's not my money, it's the town's money, and that I want to get the best deal for the town. As long as it's a heavy-duty vehicle and it meets our needs, we'll purchase it if it's on the state bid list.
Yeah, I just don't want to see the streets being, somebody trying to plow the streets with a Cybertruck is all.
Oh, no, that's not going to happen.
Okay. Just want to make sure, because there's a lot of push for some of that stuff at a larger level, so I just want to make sure that we're not that dumb here. Okay, cool. Thank you.
All right, were you waiting at the microphone, sir? Oh, set. All right, seeing no one at the microphone. All in favor of the motion on Article 26, raise your green cards. Cards down, all opposed? That carries by majority. Motion under Article 27, Select Board, please.
I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $80,000 to purchase and equip an emergency response vehicle for the fire department, including all costs incidental and related thereto.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, recommendation Select Board.
So the Select Board unanimously recommends it is important for providing transportation for on-call fire or officers and responding from their homes, as well as it also serves as a mobile command post. It's pretty important.
Okay, recommendation from the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends a dedicated emergency response vehicle will provide on-scene coordination, improved firefighter safety, and increase in the effectiveness of emergency operations by allowing officers to respond directly to an incident without delay. Additionally, this investment will put more personnel on a scene without hiring additional full-time firefighters or increasing the per diem budget line.
Recommendation from the Capital Committee.
The Capital Committee recommends unanimously. Although this capital item was not on the long-term capital improvement plan, the CIP, until this year, it is clear that we need to have command staff at emergency responses with all the necessary equipment and communication gear. This vehicle will provide greater public and employee safety through more responsive command leadership via access to properly equipped staff vehicles for on and off-duty command staff. For these reasons and the reasons stated by the Finance Committee and Select Board, the Capital Committee unanimously supports this article.
Going to the floor to the right, I think was first person in the line, Cindy.
Thank you, Cindy Markowitz, Meadow Lane. I feel a little bit like we're going back in time to when the police were asking for lots of new vehicles. Last night, we just approved a $29 million budget. I am also very concerned that this article plus the one ahead of it, asking for two new fire vehicles, is a major expense for the town. We are still trying to work through the need for a fire station and the space needs. Currently, the space needs have determined we need a 5-bay apparatus area. Now we've got 2 more vehicles to add to our current fleet. I did want to ask how many vehicles we currently have. I believe that these 2 new vehicles are in the projections, but I'm curious as to how many vehicles for fire we currently have and how many staff we currently have, if someone could answer that question.
I'd like to invite the fire chief to come up and address that.
Yeah, please do.
Evening, everyone. John Kivlin, Fire Chief. I believe your question was, how many vehicles do we have? Currently, we have 10 vehicles.
And how many staff that would be utilizing those vehicles, not full-time, not administrative, but actual staff that would actually use those vehicles?
So I have, not counting administrative, I have 9 full-time firefighters and approximately 30 per diems.
Okay. If I understand this correctly, this vehicle would not be parked at the firehouse, it would be parked at a employee's home?
It will be at times at the firehouse, but on nights and weekends, it's gonna help us fill a major gap in our command staff, and so at those times, it could be at someone's home, yes.
How have we been handling this need for the last 10, 20 years?
I don't know how you've been handling this need for the last whatever amount of years, to be honest with you. Not very well, to be frank. So there are times when the ambulance goes out of town on nights and weekends, we're left with 1 firefighter left behind in town. 1 firefighter it might feel good to know that there's 1 firefighter there, but a firefighter is not going to be very effective on the fire ground alone. So this is going to help us get someone back to the fire station, out to a call. If that firefighter is called out to 495, like often they are, alone, it's going to help get someone to the scene quickly and not have to go all the way back to the firehouse to get a vehicle, to get their gear, and then to go help that one individual.
Okay. I just want to be clear. I do very much support what you and your department are doing, and I don't want to be negative
I have no
about
doubt that you don't. Thank you.
acquisitions. I'm just concerned that this expense plus the other vehicle, you're adding 2 new vehicles to a fleet. You've got 9 or 10 full-time staff. You're going to have more vehicles and
Okay,
full-time
so-
staff.
Well, counting the administrative staff, right now I'm using my vehicle. My captain has a vehicle. He'll leave the vehicle on weekends. He'll have to come back and get it to go. I'm not around. I'm not available 24/7, 365. I'm available as much as I can be. This is going to help assist to get that command staff back to the scene and to give to provide another vehicle for that one person. So I guess when we talk about how many vehicles do we have versus the administrative staff, 2 of those vehicles are dedicated for the administrative staff. Those aren't for the operational crews per se.
Yeah, it's still unclear to me as to why the person who would be helping with this vehicle couldn't have a vehicle at their disposal that doesn't have to be this new vehicle, but one of the existing vehicles.
No, and I apologize because it is a little bit misleading. The vehicle that will be at the disposal of the person to come back is going to be a 2018 Tahoe. What this is going to do is this is going to bump the 2 that we have currently down the line for the administrative staff. So the administrative staff will have those, and then the rotational vehicle will be the 2018 Tahoe.
Okay, I guess I'm still having deja vu from police vehicle rotations. I'm concerned that this expenditure is beyond what the town needs.
Microphone to my left, please.
Cheryl Mahoney, Liberty Square Road. So that was kind of in line with the question I was going to ask, because my recollection of past practices is you cycle the command vehicles, and that's the intent for this. So you're going to downgrade the newest for the use of the lieutenant, and this one is going to make it to the top of the rotation because it's going to be brand new. And the 2018 will be provided to the on-call captain or supervisor when they're on call.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Microphone to my right.
Chris Dowdy, Liberty Square. I think those previous questions pretty much clarified the same thing I was asking. I was just curious, like, do we have room at the current fire station to to garage this vehicle?
Currently, right now, the two vehicles that we're using don't park inside, they park out back.
Okay, yeah, and it was who's on call, would it be just, they would have that in their driveway? I think it's been answered, but.
Right, the goal is to have any ranking officer, so currently, we have a full-time lieutenant, a per diem lieutenant, and a per diem captain, and the idea is to come up with a rotation between those three that we can check availability and make sure that we have someone available at all times to try to come back to assist with the personnel.
Okay, no, that makes sense, thanks.
Microphone to my right.
Oh, that's me.
Yes.
Mark Barbadoro, 627 Old Harvard Road. This is a softball question, but two questions. It's a two-part, but they're both very easy. Did you say they take the truck home or not?
That will be the goal, yes.
Okay. Then question two, are you going to mark it clearly with stickers saying fire department on it? Or are you going to try and leave it a stealth vehicle that maybe they could use to go to the grocery store when they're not
That
on
will not,
duty?
no.
I'm just asking about the stickers. Are we stickering them with big Boxborough Fire Department stickers?
That was not part of.
I think it
the
should
thing,
be.
But it can definitely be brought up for discussion, and we'll look at all options and
I
see
think it should
whether
be.
it should be. But there will definitely be policies and procedures on what the use of that vehicle will be when it leaves this town and when it is with that firefighter.
There's also tax implications if you don't mark them, even though it's an emergency vehicle. So for that reason alone, the town would have to keep track of the tax, the benefit of taking an unmarked vehicle to and from work.
But I can assure you that the policies and procedures will reflect that it will not be used for personal reasons when it leaves.
You can trust me on that one. Okay.
One last quick
Yeah,
question.
Yeah, I think you're at the right, you were up in line
Oh,
first.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Were you there first?
Go ahead.
Okay. So just for clarification, there's a question of whether the town really needs this extra vehicle or not. Can you elaborate a little bit on what the nature of the emergencies are that your department responds to and is likely to have to respond to with this vehicle?
Absolutely.
That'd be fantastic.
Anything from medical emergencies to hazmat calls, to fires, to motor vehicle accidents, to any sort of commercial, industrial accident. If there's any type of emergency that you can think of that a fire department would go to, we go to those, and that is what that vehicle will potentially go to.
I know
Brush fires,
working at my
wildland
group
fires.
home, you guys came out there all the time for all sorts of crazy reasons. So I know you guys have to respond to more things than just fires. There's more fires put out than just literal fires.
Well, yeah, we've become a catch-all. If there's things that people can't figure out how to handle, they tend to call the fire department, and we'll try to get through it.
Yeah, so just bouncing around, there's lots of different things that you guys have to address. And again, just wanted to check what kind of vehicles are within the scope of what you guys are considering for this vehicle. Did you have something already in mind?
So, yes, we're looking to keep the fleet consistent with the Chevy Tahoe. We spend a lot of time up on 495. That vehicle tends to provide us the most visibility when being used as a command vehicle. So it is our, number one goal for us is safety. And to have that type of visibility, to have that type of vehicle up there, potentially blocking a lane or whatever it is it may need to do, depending on when it arrives up there, it's safety and it's the size of the vehicle. The Tahoe tends to fit our needs.
Yeah, I've had a Tahoe before. They're pretty solid. Yeah, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone to my left, please.
Megan Connor, Mayfair Drive. I'd like to move the question.
Moved and seconded that we stop debate. You know the drill. This is just about stopping debate. On the question, it takes 2/3. All in favor of stopping debate, raise your green cards. Lower the cards. All opposed? That carries by the 2/3 required. We're now voting on the motion under Article 27. All in favor of the motion under Article 27, raise your green cards. All opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by majority. Motion under Article 29 we're jumping to. Motion by the Select Board.
I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $20,000 to purchase personal protective equipment, PPE, for the fire department, including all costs.
29 is utility terrain vehicle.
29?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I miswrote that down. Okay. So I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $80,000 to purchase and equip a utility terrain vehicle, UTV, for the fire department, including all costs incidental and related thereto.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation, Select Board.
The Select Board unanimously recommends, we have not in the past had a UTV. And so what this UTV, the main intent for it is to assist in brush fires and other scenarios where the current brush truck cannot get to. And we have, since the beginning of this year, we've had 11 brush fires that we've responded to. Last year, I believe it was either 24 or 26, and the fire chief can confirm that. Yep, okay, 26. And so we actually have also, this also comes in handy for search and rescue for either people with code silver, which is like dementia, or is it, what's the polite way to say it?
People.
Old, no, I don't want to say old people. But it's used in those situations as well. And we have actually, it would have been useful a year or two ago when there were, public safety was searching the woods for a person and one of our responders got heat stroke. And so that is one of the reasons why we were in such support of this request.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends the Boxborough Fire Department request funding for a purchase of a utility terrain vehicle, UTV, to enhance the emergency response capabilities within the town. This vehicle will provide critical support for accessing remote locations, responding to wildfires, and assisting in emergency medical rescues. As the town's Boxborough's population grows and the outdoor recreational activities increase, the need for a specialized emergency response vehicle has become evident.
Recommendation from the Capital Committee.
Capital Committee recommends unanimously for all the reasons stated.
To the floor, microphone to my left. Becky, oh, Gary was first. All right, we'll go to the right. Thanks for keeping track out there.
Thank you, Becky. Gary Kushner, 158 Flag Hill Road. I have a comment and a couple of questions. The comment is, and I mentioned this a little while ago, that we have a capital plan in town. You actually heard the opinion of the Capital Committee. This was not on the capital plan until this year, so the guideline has been typically, unless it's an emergency or something really important, it shouldn't be on there, or it should be on the capital plan. I'm still voting for this, by the way, but I just want to let the town know that I really believe in the capital plan and that process. Questions. This article talks about the UTV. It doesn't talk about how to get the UTV to other places. There's no trailer associated with it. I'm told it's supposed to be street ready, but how do you get it to other towns when you do interdepartmental help? And it seems to me like there should have been a trailer, and I'm questioning that piece.
I couldn't agree with you more. A trailer would be beneficial to have if we wanted to take it mutual aid and use it that way. It will be registered through the RMV. It will have road legal plates on it. So we will be able to, within the town, we will drive it to where we need to use it within the town. If it were to be part of one of the District 14 brush fire task force, we would need a trailer. A partnership with the DPW to borrow a trailer, or whatever we need to do to move it. But as of right now, we do not have it listed within the district as a mutual aid piece. And truthfully, my concern is Boxborough. My concern is my firefighters right now. My firefighters need this. And I understand that other it would be beneficial, but a lot of other fire departments have these. We do not. Right now, I need to take care of my people. I need to make sure they have the tools they need to succeed and be safe.
And the second question relates to space. We know that the firehouse is packed.
Yes.
This is something I assume you want to keep indoors. What is the plan for storing this?
So right now, my plan is that we have a light trailer that will fit in the Connex box that we received with the grant. We're going to move the light trailer out to the Connex box, and the UTV will fit where the light trailer was. Currently, it's between truck 65 and truck 60, which is a pickup truck. 65 is the hose wagon, which is going to be replaced. It's going to be replaced with the second ambulance once that arrives, which is smaller too, which is going to allow us more space in between the two vehicles. So unfortunately, we would have to pull the pickup truck out to pull the UTV out, but I think that's a small lift for our people.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Microphone to my left, please.
Hi, Becky Neville, Middle Road. I hope you all vote in favor of this article. Monday night, we heard about the misery of a 4-year-old waking up in the middle of the night. Well, that's parenthood. Misery's being in our beautiful conservation lands, and your 4-year-old is running ahead of you, falls and hits their head on a rock and is unresponsive. Or your spouse having a cardiac event and being unresponsive. You call 911 and have to wait for the firefighters and EMTs to hike in and carry a stretcher out. Time delay is misery. The end result could be your worst nightmare. Monday night, we let our employees know we don't care about their working condition. Let's at least give them the tools they need, including vehicles, to do their jobs. Please vote yes on this, and let's avoid the misery.
Microphone to my right, please.
Cindy Markowitz, Meadow Lane. At the risk of sounding like Adam Klein from last night, I'm going to remind folks that we did vote a $29 million budget, and a bunch of these warrant articles have already passed. I guess a couple questions for the chief. Could we defer this expense until next year or the following year? Is that a possibility?
We are in, and I know it seemed like, especially after last weekend, we had a lot of precipitation. That is not the case. We are in drought conditions still. We've had 11 brush fires since January already this year. It would not be, I mean, I would not recommend deferring it. I, quite frankly, was shocked that with the amount of conservation land that we have, the amount of trails that we have, I'm shocked that the town of Boxborough doesn't already have one of these.
You also referenced mutual aid. Could we potentially rely on mutual aid for this vehicle? It sounds like many towns do have it. Again, I'm trying to be conscious of the budget and the expenditure on everybody in town.
Generally, when these go mutual aid, it's for pre-planned events. I'll give you, like, we were requested to Concord for the 250th to provide mutual aid with the UTV. We could not fulfill that request because we didn't have it. Generally, when these, we also were requested to a massive emergency management exercise, if you will, in Littleton, and to bring a UTV, we could not bring it. So generally, when the requests for the UTVs go out from other communities, it's based on pre-planned events, large gatherings of people, exercises, drills, if you will. UTVs haven't really fit into the mutual aid run card yet, aside from task forces. And again, we're not looking to provide that as a task force piece. And by the time a task force gets activated, by the time one of these is loaded in a trailer, dragged to the rally point, and brought to where it needs to be, we're not talking minutes like we're looking for, we're talking up to hours. So it's not something that would be readily available in mutual aid, even from our mutual aid partners. It's going to take some time to mobilize it.
Okay, again, I'm concerned that Boxborough, albeit important, is trying to build a department that can cover every possible eventuality, and it's costing quite a bit of money. I know Acton is trying a pilot program for their fire departments to move their facilities to just 2 facilities, a north and a south. Have you talked to Acton about potentially having any efficiencies of either use of their equipment or use of their space while that pilot program is going on?
So my understanding is that the pilot program was to go down to 2, and that at some point next week, I believe they're going to be going back to 3, is my understanding in my conversations with Acton. I've also, yes, I've had conversations with Chief Arnhem about where can we look into shared resources, where can we look into efficiencies for both departments. I've also had those discussions with Chief McCurdy in Littleton. I am in discussions with any and all chiefs that want to talk about how can we share resources, how can we be more efficient together. It's when it comes to this, it's just they need to be readily available. And again, when it comes to mutual aid, the thing right now is that they are just not readily available on mutual aid.
Okay. And it wasn't clear to me from Gary's comment, was this or was this not included in the capital plan?
It was not.
And the other vehicle was not as well, is that correct?
That's correct. When I came in, I wasn't part of the previous plan. I came in, I did an analysis of the fire department. I looked at where our weaknesses were. I looked at the threats that we face. And I made adjustments to our plan based on that, and again, I've had conversations with the TA. My mistake for making amendments, there probably should have been a little bit more communication to the capital committee for the needs that I found.
Okay, again, I am supportive of the department and your needs. I would suggest that perhaps this is an item we could defer at least 1 year and give folks a little bit of a break. Thank you.
Microphone to my left, please.
John Fallon, 500 Paddock Lane. One of the things this town is very proud of is the amount of land we have in restriction in conservation. It has been a goal of this town for 40 years to have undeveloped land. By definition, undeveloped land does not have roads running through it. I think it's a shock that we never had this, that we survived this long without it. At some point in time, we will have a disaster, a catastrophe. We will be upset, and we will say, why didn't we vote for this in May of 2025? We have a huge amount of beautiful conservation land and beautiful open land, and right now it's effectively unreachable in terms of a disaster. So I would urge everybody to vote for this.
Microphone to my right, please.
Dave Fall at 120 Cobley. If I ran into a utility terrain vehicle in the parking lot, I wouldn't know what it is. Can you give us a basic description, size? Does it have 6 wheels? Does it carry water? I really don't know what this actually is.
So actually, within my presentation, I believe there's a picture of what it would look like.
That would be great.
Okay.
Okay, so it's the size of a Pinto?
It's actually much, maybe much smaller.
Okay. Have you hiked any of the trails in the conservation areas? Are you familiar with these trails?
I have had to go out to the trails only once, and it was for someone that was missing. I didn't have a chance to really take it all in and enjoy it at the time, unfortunately. I apologize. Twice now I've had to go in for people, but no, I have not had the opportunity to get out and hike any of the trails to the way I would like to.
I guess the question I have, and you're not going to be able to answer it, is how much coverage does really get us? Most of the major areas have old cart paths that are quite open where you can drive regular vehicles down if you needed to. A lot of the trails, you're not going to get that up the hills and through the rocks, of which there are an awful lot in Boxborough. I mean, I think I support this, but I've never tried driving one of these. I hike the trails daily, and there are a lot of trails that's not going to move on.
My past experience from having utilized one in my previous fire department, and actually just this past fall utilizing one on a task force, there was nothing that could stop us. I'd almost want to say, let's go for a ride, challenge accepted, let's see where we could go. But
Right, I will happily, I'm going to vote for it, and you.
But it's the idea of it is that we will be able to get through the majority. Yes, there will be times where maybe there's a brook, maybe there's something that is stopping us from having to go. I can assure you that carrying someone 250 feet back to this vehicle versus carrying somebody a mile out of the woods is going to be much more safe and way more efficient for our department.
Yeah, so I've done some rescue before, so I understand the problem.
Yes.
So I'm going to vote for it, but you owe me a ride.
Yes, sir.
We will go out and we will try some of these trails. I think they're a little harder than maybe you realize in some
As long
cases.
as you wear your seatbelt.
No problem.
Okay.
Microphone to my left, please.
Gotta stop laughing. Jim Connolly, 152 Flag Hill Road. Thanks for the photo. I was going to ask about that, but in reference to the photo, I just wanted to, just one little item of clarification. You have, in the photo, you have fire equipment loaded in the rear, which I assume you would buy this with the fire equipment available to be loaded in there, but is it readily removable so that you can transport somebody also?
That picture, and I apologize because you only see one side of the vehicle.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the skid that slides into the back, you can see where the tank and where the hose reel is. Directly to the other side of that, there is a fold-out that comes down where a Stokes basket, where we would place a patient, would go and rest on top of right there.
So the patient would ride outboard on the right-hand side?
Can you see the triangle that
Yeah.
sticks out off the back?
Yeah.
That folds back. When that is folded out like that, a Stokes basket or a backboard, that will slide right into that position, and that's where a patient can be
Okay.
driven out.
So it has fire equipment and
There's
transport
both,
one
yes. It
person?
is dual purpose. It's for, well, it's more than dual purpose. It's multi-purpose, but it is designed for rescue and for firefighting.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Microphone to my right, please.
Griffin Verman, 318 Common Hill Road, apartment E2. So I just kind of wanted to put this into perspective for everybody. You just voted down the fire department, taking the next steps to getting a new fire department. So that, whatever's going to be happening with the new fire department, we know that's needed, is going to be delayed at least another year probably. I do not think that this kind of vehicle is something that you're going to want to delay a year. Personally, I used to live in a very rural area, way more rural than this. We just had dirt roads, and it was a 2.5-mile walk to the bus station, the bus stop for me to go to school, and then an 1.5-hour ride to school. So I know rural, and I know what it's like to have a crisis in a rural area that's not accessible by ambulance. Like I got into an accident on a 4-wheeler, just getting a ride back home from school on the 2.5-mile ride, and I almost died. They had to send a helicopter out. So if you guys don't like the noise of a siren in your nice little neighborhoods, of a fire station, you're not going to like the sound of a helicopter coming down in the middle of the woods. I know you guys are very proud of your conservation land, but if you want it to make sure it's accessible, and especially as the population of Boxborough is getting older, you could break a hip out on those trails anytime. And you're going to want them to be able to get to you lickety-split. You're not going to be wanting to be waiting out there for some other town to stick something on a trailer or get out to you. This sounds like a really good investment, and it's not the sort of thing I think you want to wait another year on. Thank you.
Microphone to my left, please.
Cheryl Mahoney, 188 Liberty Square Road. So, Chief, based on that photo there, that has, and again, I'm not a mechanic, but it has the individual suspension. So it's basically an ATV on steroids.
It's one way to put it, yes.
Yeah, so if anyone has ever been on vacation and rented an ATV to go back trail riding, you can have a deer path and be able to get down that deer path because of the way the suspension systems on these vehicles are structured. Is that correct?
Yes.
And so my only other thing is to the point that everyone's making about how proud we are about our conservation trails. This is before your time, but I'm sure you have heard about the brush fire at Harvard Ridge and how close this town came from having a catastrophic event, and it was only averted by your department, heroic efforts, climbing hills at like 55% inclines in the middle of summer with trail hoses. So if you want to be committed to preserving conservation land, this is a tool that the chief has identified as being necessary to preserve that conservation land that you folks all love. Thank you.
Microphone to my right, please.
Chris Dowdy, Liberty Square. Move the question.
It's been moved and seconded that we stop debate. It needs a 2/3. You know the drill. All in favor of stopping debate right now, raise your green cards. All opposed, raise your green cards. That carries by the 2/3. We're now voting on the motion on Article 29 as moved. All in favor of Article 29 motion, raise your green cards. All opposed, lower your green cards. That passes by majority. Motion under Article 32 we're up to, I believe. Someone's going to check me on that? 32. Motion by the Select Board.
Article 32, Town Museum Roof. I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $39,100 to replace the town museum roof, including demolition, removal, site preparation, acquisition of materials, and all other costs incidental and related thereto.
Okay, moved and seconded. The recommendation from the Select Board.
The Select Board recommends unanimously this article for the reasons stated in the summary. Having a town building with two different sets of roof shingles which has been susceptible to leaks is a situation that needs immediate attention.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
FinCom approves unanimously.
Recommendation from the Capital Committee.
Capital Committee recommends unanimously.
And recommendation from the Historical Commission.
Historical Commission recommends.
Questions from the floor? Microphone to my right, please.
Kathy Vorts, Liberty Square Road. I was noting that the description was, we had 20-year shingles put on this the last time. Has any investigation been made to do say a metal roof for a 50-year duration and, avoid some of the leaks? But I think it's also kind of period appropriate for a building like that. More common in Vermont or something, but
That asphalt shingles, didn't look at
okay.
other roofing
I just
treatments.
did a metal roof on my barn, and I think it competes with the pricing for the asphalt. And I think there are other, depending on various things, the color you use, whatever, any additional insulation you put underneath it, that there's perhaps more bang for the buck, and it's worth looking into. But
I think that's a statement, not a question,
I'm not
Alan.
an expert on roofing, but at the wonderful museum is a very peculiar looking design. It's not.
yeah, I agree.
So I don't know whether it's amenable to doing that, but.
It wasn't investigated then.
Okay, it was not.
Microphone to my left, please.
Cheryl Mahoney, 188 Liberty Square Road. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but this article doesn't identify the materials that we will be using. So when you begin, Mike, when you begin this bid process, if it turns out a proposal comes in, or when you're developing your specs, if somehow or another, based on your research, you do identify that metal might be the better choice, even though it's contrary to every other building in this community, you can still consider that based on the parameters of this article, correct?
That's correct. This quote was based on 30-year asphalt shingles, but certainly if it's within this price, we're not, the motion doesn't lock us to that. You're correct.
And as a member of the Historical Society, which we maintain the museum, but thanks to the volunteerism of Alan and John Fallon and others in our group, it's not just a museum. And I want to remind people, it's called a museum in this article. However, the town uses that space for essential services. There are town clerk records stored in the basement. There is public safety equipment in that building. There is recreation equipment in that building. And we found out several years ago that we kept passing off. This is why the capital plan was so essential and why Gary and his other crew have been so diligent with this. We kept passing off just general maintenance to the point where we almost lost the Steel Farm farmhouse through benign neglect. I think this is proactive. I think this is prudent, and I would really encourage the people here tonight to approve this. Thank you.
Microphone to my right, please.
Mark Barbadoro, 627 Old Harvard Road. You said you have a quote. Did you just get one quote? Did the quote come out to $39,100? Just curious.
Yes, it did. So a company did the library roof. We asked them while they were here to give us a conservative quote so that we could go back out and put it to bid.
Seeing no one at a microphone. All in favor of the motion under Article 2, please raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by majority. Motion under Article 33 from the Sustainability Committee, please.
Yeah, we do have a presentation. I do have a presentation if you give me a couple of minutes.
Okay, we need a motion first. Do you have the motion packet in front of you?
Sure.
Or anyone can make the motion if they have the packet.
I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash in the sum of $11,000 for the purpose of permitting, site work, acquisition of materials, construction, and all other activities and costs necessary to install a swap shed at the transfer station, including all costs incidental and related thereto.
Moved and seconded. We can have a presentation and recommendation from the Sustainability Committee.
Great, thank you. So I'm Kate Davies. I'm the chair of the Sustainability Committee, just in my first year. And this warrant article has been supported unanimously by the BSC, FinCom, Select Board, and Capital Committee. And we would love to have folks vote yes on this warrant article to fund the construction of the swap shed. So you're probably wondering, some of you, what is a swap shed? So this is a very common feature of many transfer stations. In our area, Acton, Carlisle, Hudson, and Littleton all have popular swap sheds. They're a space where residents can drop off or take gently used items, and rather than disposing of them in the dump. And volunteers usually help to keep these swap sheds open and organized. So these are some images of a few of the local swap sheds, both inside and out. The one on the left from Hudson is probably sort of similar to the size that we are proposing as the minimum size for Boxborough. So why should Boxborough invest in a swap shed? This is a really important part of actually a wider effort, which I mentioned after somebody made a question last night, about that we're doing across Boxborough as a very collaborative effort to try and reduce the amount of waste that Boxborough produces and pays to dispose of. So the town this year received a technical assistance grant from Mass DEP to work with a municipal assistance coordinator from the state on this effort of waste reduction. And the waste reduction working group that we put together as part of that effort has identified the swap shed as part of this wider effort that's underway. So adding this option at the transfer station will promote sustainability and help reduce the cost of disposal because it removes items in good condition from the disposal stream. Currently, this does happen, as you may be aware, if you've ever been to our transfer station, this does happen informally anyways. Many people will place gently used items to the side of the bins so that people can come and peruse those items and see if there's something that they want to take. But at the end of every day, Larry has to put those items into the bins, so they don't have a home long-term. So the swap shed would provide us with a space for those items that are actually in good condition and not very, very broken, to have a long-term storage space where people can come and peruse. And if the items are needed at household goods, if items aren't adopted by locals on a certain amount of time frame, they could also be donated to some of our local centers, such as household goods, and then passed on to families in need. So we think that this is a really great option for the town. It addresses many of the concerns and values of our community that are already in place. And the Sustainability Committee conducted a survey recently, Of many Boxborough residents, we had more than 100 responses, and 85% of survey respondents indicated that they would use a swap shed if one was available. So other than occasional maintenance, we think that this swap shed option will not be an ongoing cost to the town. We believe that the maintenance for, if a door handle breaks or something, should be less than $200 a year. And so this is really a one item that we would commit to spending money on, an investment that will provide ongoing benefits to the town because of that ongoing reduction of waste from our waste stream. So this kind of follows on from the common idiom that one person's trash is another person's treasure. So a little bit about the swap shed size, cost, and location that we're proposing. The exact structure, size, and location will be determined very much with input from the Waste Management Working Group and from the DPW director. So we've already discussed locations with Ed. We've been actually working with Ed on this project for about a year now. And at a minimum, we think that an 8 by 10 by 12 shed should be an appropriate size for the needs of Boxborough if we're taking into account this wider work that we're going to be doing to reduce waste across the town. We think that we've looked into a couple of options, and the estimated cost for a prefabricated shed is about $11,000. We think that there is space for this if we potentially move a few things around and potentially take out a couple of the textile bins. Currently, there are 4 textile bins at the transfer station, which I think we don't really need 4. So we think that this is a really good use of space. And finally, I've had a lot of questions from folks about management of the swap shed, which I think are really important and meaningful, and so I want to address that. So to reduce the volume of large items that we know people often see at the transfer station, we're proposing to adopt, and we've worked with Home Goods to develop a plan for a biannual donation drop-off event that the BSC will host. And this will allow people to bring those large items like big chairs, couches, things like that, that sometimes get brought and then left. They can donate those on donation days, and then those will not be things that we have to deal with at the swap shed on a regular basis. Smaller items like maybe chairs or bicycles can be left outside and then brought in the evening. So we're going to develop guidelines for what are acceptable items, and we have many other towns in our area to support recommendations in that space. And I think the most important thing is that, like Acton and many other towns in our area, the shed will be run by a rotation of knowledgeable volunteers coordinated by the BSC. And these folks will organize the shed. They'll educate residents about donations. What do we take? What do we not take? And they'll transport useful items to household goods on an as-needed basis. We already have 10 residents who have volunteered to be involved in this piece of the management of the swap shed. So, and I've had a few other people actually sign up tonight, so thank you very much for doing that. So similar to other sheds, we think that this is a really great option for the town. Management is not going to be a burden on the DPW staff, and it's actually an opportunity for the town to come together and be in community together in a space where people often are already looking for that connection. People are always at the transfer station handing out flyers, talking about their election plans and things like that. So this will provide another point of contact. But the location will be far enough out of the flow of traffic that it will not cause a safety problem. We will have a pilot period to assess the volume and adoption time of items, and then we will maybe shift around some of the volunteer hours and things like that, but we think we have a pretty solid plan. This is what the swap shed might look like, something along these lines, if we did get one. Then I just wanted to say thank you very much for your attention and time, and if you're interested, you can scan this QR code and get involved. So, questions or comments?
Recommendation from the Finance Committee, please.
The Finance Committee recommends passage of this article unanimously. It will support the town's sustainability efforts and enable residents to save a few dollars on common everyday items.
Recommendation from the Select Board, please.
The Select Board unanimously recommends this article. As a green community, it is vital to support sustainability efforts like this to help reduce waste and promote reuse. Massachusetts aims to reduce waste disposal by 30% by 2030 and by 90% by 2050. And getting rid of waste is going to cost our town a lot more. So I think this is an easy way to kind of promote in terms of reducing waste overall. So Select Board unanimously recommends this.
And recommendation from the Capital Committee, please.
The Capital Committee recommends unanimously. Although this capital item is not in the long-term capital plan until this year, the need and desire of the community to support this acquisition, and the town has applied for and has been awarded a $6,000 grant from Mass DEP to supplement the $11,000 being requested for this article. For these reasons and for the reasons stated by the Sustainability Committee, Finance Committee, Select Board, and Capital Committee unanimously supports this article.
All right, we'll go to the floor, starting with microphone on the left, please.
Thank you, Becky Neville, Middle Road. I think I totally support this. I just have a question for council. In the motion, it talks about materials, construction, and all other activities. Now, what I really want to know is, based on the vote on Monday night for Article 1, the zoning article that failed, right in the summary it says, the town's building commissioner, also the zoning enforcement officer, and town council have both confirmed that no municipal construction is allowed anywhere in town without a change to current zoning. Do you think we can actually do this?
Yes.
I didn't ask you, I asked town council.
The question is to town council, please.
Yes.
Okay, why? Because the motion says construction. It doesn't matter. It says anywhere in town. It's not it doesn't matter residential or not.
In my opinion, what we're doing here is placing a shed in an area where there is already an existing municipal use. So we have if you want to say it's a an existing prior non-conforming use, but this essentially at this point in time is just we're dropping a shed into a space that's already being utilized by the town for municipal purposes.
Okay, well, I'm going to support this. I just think there might be a legal problem down the road.
Microphone to my right, please.
I don't think there's going to be a legal problem building a swap shed down at a transfer station. Mark Barbadoro, 627 Old Harvard Road. I'm super excited about this concept. The idea of reusing instead of recycling is a higher tier of efficiency. It's cleaner, more environmentally friendly. But I was wondering if maybe a shipping container or something bigger than 10 by 12 might be in order, because you'll fill that thing up in like half a day. And depending upon how many people come in, I don't know that 10 by 12 is the right size for it. So I would stretch that dollar and go as big as Ed Kokula will let you on that property. Thanks.
All right, microphone to my left, please.
Andrew Tavalacci, 617 Old Harvard Road. I'm fully in support of this swap shed. And in addition to Mark's comment, I looked at costs for building a shed that's bigger than this at 12 by 16, and it fit within that 11,000, maybe a little bit more than that, which the $6,000 could cover. But it would not include the cost of the construction of a customized shed, not a prefab shed. So in that case, this is an appeal to everyone with construction abilities to volunteer to help build it once we get the funds for it. Thank you.
Microphone to my right, please.
Yeah, Dave Fowler, 120 Cobley. Yes, this is going to be one of those rare things I vote against based on personal experience. What we have now is extremely vibrant. There is far more than a 10 by 12 square foot region of stuff that goes through there. But it has this nice characteristic that it resets at the end of the day, and what's left gets thrown away. The other town I have experience with, that shed is over 1,000 square feet. And the problem is that the ratio of stuff coming in to the ratios to what's going out has got to be somewhere in the order of 5 to 1 or worse. And so the problem is you have far more stuff coming in that people think are treasures than things that are being picked up and taken out the other side. There's no chance you're going to do that with a shed that size for starters. But you run into these very ugly problems of, okay, well, do you now not let people put things out in the regular area for swap? You know, one of the visions this town had was if they put up a swap shed, that the stuff that was just kind of piled by the side would disappear, and that didn't work. You have people coming up with their treasures that obviously belong in the dumpster, but they're their treasures, and now you have to you have volunteers telling people, no, you know, your 5-year-old gas cooker has lived a good life, but it needs to go away. And my experience is just, it's a great concept, but in practice it doesn't work. And I think that you know, if you actually look at the velocity of stuff that's being exchanged right now, it's, I think, a lot higher than you'd realize. I brought home a number of things that my wife maybe returned the following weekend. But I just, it's a great idea. In practice, I don't think it'll work. The bringing in household goods biannually, that is a brilliant idea. I love that one. But I just, it doesn't work, and especially doesn't work at this small size.
Microphone to my left, please.
Heather Fleming, Stowe Road. That was I appreciated hearing that last comment. I guess I'll start first saying I'm one of the founders of the Freebie Project, which is really all about this sustainability. We've partnered often with the Sustainability Committee. And I just wanted to share my experience, even though Freebie is largely about collecting food that is at risk of going into the waste stream and redistributing it to people, anybody who wants to have it, who can eat it, as opposed to it going into the trash. We also do books and crafts and some physical items. I can't tell you the number of times that I've had people say, well, can't we bring stuff? Like, can't we bring all the stuff that ends up at the dump? And I think we would actually have a pretty strong turnover of things that are arriving and things leaving. But the reason why we've been leery of doing that is that, well, what do we do with the stuff that gets left? And I don't have enough volunteer power or storage for any of those things. So we've stayed away from it specifically because there hasn't been a storage option, or there hasn't been a transportation option for getting things from our site across from Town Hall to the transfer station or wherever else. I love this idea so much. I feel like it would fill a lot of needs. And as to the last comment about it having not enough flow, I think I would quote my husband, who couldn't be here tonight, but it's like, embrace the power of and, right? So I'm not picturing, and Kate can correct me, but I'm not picturing that anything that comes to the dump to be potentially rehomed to someone else. It's not like it all has to fit in the shed. It's not like you can only come and you can only drop something off at the shed. The stuff that's there now, I'm picturing it's going to be the same thing. People are still going to come and they're going to drop off their stuff. But what's going to help is that the volunteers who are volunteering there and who have an eye for what are the things that household goods needs, what are the things that are being asked for on Buy Nothing all the time, what are the things that we know there is a demand for teachers or preschool teachers that can't get there on a Wednesday afternoon to pick up this stuff. They'll be watching for those things, can collect them, store them in the shed, have them available for anybody who wants to come and claim them. But then at the end of the day, even though there's the reset of the junk that no one's going to have, yes, but the stuff that really somebody, if they just happened to be there that day, would have loved to have, and we can save it from going in the trash and in the waste stream, let's do both, right? And then the only last thing is one little comment or suggestion. If you could have a bin, this drives me nuts that nobody's done it yet, 20 seconds, a bin for deposit cans somewhere. Why is no one collecting that money? Because it just goes in the recycling. Collect them, and it could pay for part of the transfer shed, right? That's my...
Microphone to my right, please.
Yeah, Gary Kushner, 158 Flag Hill Road. First of all, I've walked home with bikes, bicycles, sleds, a drum set, but they go back also. I think it's small, and I'm worried about that, but the reason I'm here, one of the comments made was it's $11,000 and forgotten. You heard me talk about the capital plan. This thing needs to be either fixed or replaced over the years, so it's not a one-time cost. So just note that it will be in the capital plan going forward if it's approved. You know, we got to replace the roof eventually, siding. You saw the Hudson one up there, that was horrible. That should have been replaced multiple years earlier. You know, so it does take maintenance, it does take repairs, so there's going to be some cost.
I just want to clarify that I did say there would be a small ongoing maintenance cost. But thank you for that point.
Microphone to my left, please.
Kristen O'Neill, 408 Mass Ave. Kate, I wanted to ask you to speak more on the plan. You have a very good plan here, but we haven't heard it in its entirety because it's town meeting and we're trying to be efficient. But I'm hearing a lot of questions about like what stays, how is that managed, and the space. We're not going to be able to hold on to everything, but we're going to be able to hold on to some things week to week. But if you could speak to that a little bit more, please.
Yeah, so I have to say that we do have a bunch of ideas from other towns. So if anybody's interested in digging into this, that we're using the town of Acton and the town of Arlington. Both have very active swap sheds that I've visited and I'm familiar with, and they have a good set of like guidelines that they have posted on their website and are posted on the wall of the swap sheds. And you know, they do, whenever there's a community event, some folks from the swap shed show up and like do some education with the community about what we can do at the swap shed. But because this hasn't actually passed yet, the BSC hasn't like dug into those details and approved anything as yet. But that's very much what we expect to do as sort of the next step, and in collaboration with this working group that we have support from the technical assistance grant from the state. I think it will also happen in partnership with Household Goods in particular, because they have specific items that they're looking for and that they update regularly. And we have some folks involved who have said they are really committed to being volunteers on this project, who work at Household Goods also. So that connection is already there, so that we're gonna do exactly what Heather said, where there will be sort of folks who are semi-professional pickers who are kind of making sure that the things that might go to Household Goods, if they're not adopted by folks in the town, will be able to get those resources. So that's probably as much of a plan as we have at this stage, but it will be fully developed before the swap shed is actually up and running.
So we're not keeping every single thing.
No,
that's
we're definitely
coming.
not.
We're
This
being
is not
selective, and
really.
This is a great start.
Yes,
and
I want to make it really clear.
In 10 years, we
dump.
might be talking about something bigger, but this is a pilot program. I think it's a small lift. It's an incredible commitment to our sustainability that we've been talking about as a town. And I just wanted to also share that I grew up in a town with a swap room. And it was a community hub. Mm-hmm. It's where people would go with their coffee on Saturday morning and catch up with people that they didn't get to see during the week. I sourced art materials for art projects in high school from that space. It was just a great community hub, and in a community where we're always struggling to find those community spaces, this is a great step forward in that direction. So thank you.
Microphone to my right, please.
Megan Connor, Mayfair Drive. Just having experience with sheds, having served on the Recreation Commission, we just put one in at Liberty and a pavilion, but we've also put one over at Flara, and that was done by an Eagle Scout candidate. So just a suggestion. I know we have potential grant coming in, but maybe working with like contractors, volunteers in the area, but also talking to our scouts to see if they might be willing to help get involved in that too. But I definitely support that. I'm also wondering about how the signups and volunteers, how that management is going to work, because I'd hate to, like you said, burden our DPW. So they have enough going on with everything else. So.
Yeah, the BSC will be coordinating the volunteers for the swap shed.
Okay.
So
thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Microphone to my left, please.
Cheryl Mahoney, Liberty Square Road. I got my questions. All right, so first off, I asked you previously, when is this $6,000 grant expiring?
So that grant expires, I believe we need to spend it before the end of this fiscal year.
Okay, so, correct me if I'm wrong, we cannot use the $11,000 that you're seeking until after July 1st, which means the grant is going to go away before you buy the shed.
So the idea is to use the grant to pour the concrete pad that the shed will then be built on, so that we can spend some of that grant money prior to the actual shed purchasing.
So my question is to the professionals that we hire for these construction questions, is that allowed?
Mike? The spending or the construction?
The use for this project, spending the $6,000 on the pad prior to the purchase of the shed.
Yes, I can answer that. So yes, the grant money would be spent first on whatever parts need to be done before what is voted tonight, if passed, could be used.
And then another, I have to also ask Mike this question, that this is a municipal structure. Does it have to be bid out through combis, or can we buy it off market?
So this, we would have to get, we'd have to go with 3 quotes. We don't have, it's not high enough level that we'd have to go out to bid with it.
So we can still do market as long as we comply with all the state regs?
As long as we have three quotes.
Okay. So to Heather's comment, cautionary tale, the reason why we do not do bottle collection, and I see a lot of Boy Scouts and Boy Scout parents here tonight, we used to, but then volunteerism fell off, and the trailer that we collected these bottles with became an actual health hazard to the DPW staff because it became infested with insects and otherwise. So the Boy Scouts had to cease that fundraising action. And also, love the idea, love the concept. However, there's no concrete plan. I believe that the town can defer buying this shed and develop these guidelines and a framework, which is not going to cost us anything, and then come back to the town with a solid guideline formulated so that we can have full support. And also, under Article 7, DPW said they did not have enough staffing. This is, I know, again, unintended consequences. This could potentially add to the work at DPW. Thank you.
Microphone to my right, please.
Griffin Verman, 318 Codman Hill Road, apartment E2. Well, now you guys are getting into my neighborhood, because this is down the street from me. My main question, though, is, so I saw Acton Swap Shed was open one day online, and I happened to be in the neighborhood, and I was like, oh, I want to go check that out. And when I went down there, I could not find it. And come to find out, I might not have even been able to access it without a sticker. But since I live in a condo complex, I have no real solid reason for getting a transfer station sticker because we have dumpsters that we can put pretty much everything in. And I think the only occasion where it might have been helpful for me to have a sticker was when I first moved in and had to get rid of like an old mattress and had nowhere for it to go. But I still wasn't even worth getting a sticker for. Like I would have been paying, I don't know, $30 to. Anyway, my question is, who's going to be able to access this shed? Personally, I think it should be accessible to anybody in the community, even people outside of our town who can come and like get stuff. You don't want to, you're more at risk of an overflow of stuff than people dumping off too much stuff, honestly. So yes, probably need a sticker to be able to dump stuff there, but making it available to anybody to access, I would strongly advocate for. Has there been discussion around this at all yet?
We have had some discussion about it. I think initially the plan will be for people who have stickers who are coming to the transfer station anyways to be the ones who can access it. But I do think that would be in the sort of long-term plan for us to develop a way to have folks like maybe buy a swap shed pass. That would be a very small amount. That's what many towns do, is they have like a swap shed only pass. That, I would say, would be something that would add to the burden of the DPW a little bit. So that's something we would have to negotiate.
That's
with
why I
Ed.
was saying, just keeping it open to pretty much anybody in the community, but in order for them to dump anything off at it, they have to have a transfer station sticker.
It's just the issue is enforcement, and we already have a lot of issues with folks anecdotally accessing the transfer station without stickers, which is one of the issues that this like working group is really trying to get a handle on. So I would say your question is a super important one, but it's part of something that we're going to be dealing with as part of this wider effort to reduce waste in the town. That isn't necessarily, it's not decision making, that's just up to the sustainability committee.
Okay. I just wanted to put that out there.
Absolutely important point.
And happy to volunteer for it since it's down the road anyway.
Awesome.
Microphone to my left.
Mary Nedworski, Stonehenge Place. I move the question.
It's been moved and seconded to move the question, which means stopping debate. This is just to stop debate, takes 2/3. All in favor of stopping debate, raise your green cards. Cards down, all opposed. That carries by the 2/3. We're now voting on the motion on Article 33. All in favor, raise your green cards. Cards down, all opposed. That carries by majority. Motion on Article 35 from the Library Board of Trustees, please. Mary's on my list, yeah.
Tilt. I move that the town vote to transfer from free cash the sum of $50,000 to provide for the renovation of the library's interior space, including demolition, equipping, furnishing, and all other costs incidental and related thereto.
It's been moved and seconded. Library Board of Trustees recommendation.
The Library Board of Trustees recommends unanimously, and I would note that the project actually costs closer to $300,000, but we have a donation from the Library Foundation that many of you donate to each year in the amount of $200,000, and a donation from the Friends of the Library that are reducing the cost. So the remaining amount is $50,000.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
The Finance Committee unanimously recommends this article. The proposed interior library updates, funded primarily by the Sargent Memorial Library Foundation and the Friends of the Library, will efficiently reallocate space to better serve our community's current and future needs.
And recommendation from the Capital Committee.
The Capital Committee recommends unanimously.
All right, going to the floor. Microphone to my left, please.
Coleman Connolly, 152 Flag Hill Road. I just wanted to ask about something I read in the summary in the warrant for this article. There was a line here saying the reference collection is not relevant anymore, and I wanted to ask if the library trustees or a member of the library staff could clarify that.
Okay, I am the director, Peijan Bartley of the library. So the reference collection that I'm talking about are encyclopedias, dictionaries, thesaurus, and a lot of the older textbooks. So question, when you have something you don't know these days, raise your hand if you don't go to Google first. So most of you, I see one person who raised their hand, and I do go to Google first, even though I'm a librarian. I do vet what I see, and I try to avert my eyes from ChatGPT's summary. But the fact of the matter is, I haven't renewed that reference set, any of the reference sets, since I became the director 6 years ago, and I'm sorry, 7 years ago. And I know for a fact that nobody is really using them. What are being really used are the children's reference. So we are buffing up that part of the collection, but the adult side, with all those shelves sitting there, it's wasted space. And we are seeing a lot of people, we are getting calls from people asking if there's a remote call available room, if they have, they want to meet with their tutors. Right now, tutors are sitting outside working with their students. And it is fine, but also not really. And we've had social workers meeting with their clients in the library, it's better if we have a dedicated room where they can close the door. It's not in the main sight line, and they can have their privacy, they can discuss and work out their business.
So just to clarify then, there's going to be no sunsetting of services. We're just moving in a
No.
different direction with the library?
Absolutely. There's no sunsetting any service. Books are not going anywhere. Okay, and so the reference, what we do is we have our set budget, and I'm going to look at it because our material budget hasn't really increased for 3 years. And so I look at it, and then we look at what is being used, what is not being used. So there are collections, for example, books on CD. So if your car still has a CD player, you might be replacing it soon. But or like DVDs. DVDs are still, we're still getting new DVDs, but they're less, the circulation numbers are dropping down. So what we want is a lean and mean collection, and then we want to see how other people need to use the space, and we can provide that.
I just want to also say for everyone here, I am totally in support of this. I just wanted to hear what our library staff and our library trustees had to say about this. I think it's an excellent decision moving forward. I don't want to say I'm the only one because I can't know this, but I'm probably the only one who's actually gone in and picked up like a printed copy of the Mass General Laws to look through anytime in the last couple years. Of course, council.
I'm going to recommend you not do that because that set is very old. So.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm not authorized to give legal advice. But yes, I just want to say I'm very supportive of what the library does. I just wanted to get an idea of more of what the upgrades would entail and what exactly is going on here. But all in all, from what I've heard, I'm very much in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, microphone to my right, please.
Gary Kushner, 158 Flag Hill Road. I was on the building committee that built the library. Very, very proud of our library. I was initially, when this came up last year for discussion, I didn't really support it because I liked what we designed. Things change. And I fully understand that, what we built 20 plus years ago is not the same as what we need today. So I just want to comment that we have a great library. It's still great, and it's going to be even greater. And thank you.
And I do want to remind everybody, because we struggled with how to really describe this project. If we use the word renovation, you'll think construction. We're really not constructing anything. We are rearranging it. So what we are going to do is actually we're going to relocate the young adult area. We're going to pull it out to the main hall, and then we're going to shuffle the shelves so the reference are not going to be reference anymore. We're going to move the DVD collections and the audio collections to the back. And the young adult room, the current young adult room, what we're going to do is we're going to put in 3 of the study pods. So I am going down to New York actually next week to look at those study pods. There are a couple of companies that I am interested in getting their product. And so these will be 2-person study pods and 4-people study pods. So that would allow for small meetings and also for tutoring to people or like English at large conversations. And so that would allow us to do a lot more. But there's no construction involved. It's really the shifting. And I've already spoke to DPW at length, so we're going to do a lot of it, it's going to be DIY. And I'm already telling my staff they should start working on now because we have a lot of books we're going to have to move.
Microphone to my right, please.
Seeing as there's not that many people lined up, maybe I'm not needed, but, Heather Fleming, Stowe Road. If anybody who's on Facebook follows the Neighbors of Boxborough page, you'll already know that I am completely biased. The library is my favorite place in town. It's awesome. I just wanted to make sure that there was more vocal support for this. I think anything that the library can do. Oh, I remember what I wanted to say. I was actually, there was what did you call it? Like a listening project?
Yeah, we had a strategic planning.
The strategic planning
process.
The effort that has gone into really thinking carefully about what the community needs and how to use the space we have while not creating costs that the town is trying to be prudent about how we spend money. Anybody who hasn't gotten to know Pei-Shan as the library director should, and if you have gotten to know her, you'll know that she is never going to spend a penny that she doesn't have to. She works really, really hard to make sure that resources are being done wisely and for the good of the entire community. And so I just am thrilled and excited for this next chapter of what the library will be doing. And what was I going to say? I love the idea of small group meetings. I have this habit when I go to new towns to go to their library. And every library that I've been in the last 5 years has had small meeting rooms where you can book to be able to do Zoom calls or whatever for when you're working from home. And I think it would just be a really nice addition and make the library even more of a meeting place, similar to what Kristen said actually about if the swap shop happens, then that would be a meeting place. The library is too. And it's just, I don't know how you couldn't support this.
Microphone to my right again.
Yeah, Dave Fowler at 120. I want to know if you're going to take the reference books and put them in the swap shed.
Unfortunately, a lot of the recycling, so when we do books, we have places that we donate to. They don't even want them.
No, they don't. Move the question.
All right, well, seeing no one at the microphone, I'll declare that motion out of order, and we'll vote on the motion on Article 35. All in favor of Article 35? Motion on Article 35, I should say. Cards up, cards down. Those opposed, cards up. That passes by majority.
May I just say, our library director is amazing, and she is a Boxborough resident. And get to know your library online and in the building.
All right, I think we all second the motion there. Okay, that completes that set of consent agenda items. We are now on to the Community Preservation Fund consent agenda. Articles 36 through 39 have been identified as Community Preservation Fund consent articles, agenda articles. Again, unanimously recommended by Select Board and FinCom, identified in advance as items that would likely pass without debate and are intended to be acted upon as a group. So I'll do the usual thing. We'll go down one by one. When I get to 39, we'll have a motion on those that weren't held. If anybody wants a hold to discuss any of the individual articles, we can do that as we have done prior on the consent agendas. So starting off, we have Article 36, Community Preservation Fund, CPC report, and establish fiscal year 2026 reserves. Article 37, Community Preservation Fund, Community Housing, Boxborough Rental Assistance Program, or BRAP. Article 38, Community Preservation Fund, Historic Resources, Cemetery Restoration. Article 39, Community Preservation Fund, Open Space, including Recreation, Conservation Trust Fund. Hearing no holds on any of those, I will ask Select Board Chair Hilberg to make a motion on all of those articles under consent.
I move to approve the Community Preservation Fund consent agenda warrant Articles 36 through 39 in accordance with the funding sources and amounts set forth in the May 12th, 2025 annual town meeting warrant under Articles 36 through 39, respectively.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All in favor, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by majority. We are now on to the 2/3 vote required consent agenda. Again, similar drill. We have a total of 3 articles here, and I will read them in sequence. Again, if there's any interest in a hold, yell out the hold and we'll take it out. Otherwise, it'll be voted as a group. Article 40, Department of Public Works, Road Maintenance. Hold on Article 40. Article 41, Department of Public Works, hold on Article 41. And Article 42, Fire Department pumper truck replacement. So I heard a hold on Article 40 and 41. Ms. Hilberg, can I have a motion on Article 42?
Yes, sir. Give me a second.
Yeah, you can just make the motion on 42 since it's singular at this point.
I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $1,200,000 to purchase and equip a pumper truck, including all costs incidental and related thereto, and to meet this appropriation, that the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is hereby authorized to borrow said amount pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Sections 7 and 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue notes and bonds of the town therefore.
Moved and seconded. It was on consent. We'll go straight to the vote. It requires 2/3. All in favor, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by the 2/3 majority. All right, we'll back up to Article 40, Department of Public Works Road Maintenance. Do I have a motion from the Select Board?
I move that the town vote to appropriate the sum of $300,857.60 for the purpose of paving, repairing, sealing, and maintaining roadways in Foxborough, including all costs incidental and related thereto, and to meet this appropriation that the sum of $857.60 be transferred from the Transportation Network Company Fund, and that the treasurer, with the approval of the Select Board, is hereby authorized to borrow the sum of $300,000 pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 8 and 9, or any other enabling authority, and to issue notes and bonds of the town therefore.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation, Select Board?
The Select Board recommends unanimously for the reasons printed in the warrant.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee?
The Finance Committee recommends unanimously. We've been doing this since 2015, and it's really helped get our roads up and going. We've been bonding it ever since. We didn't do it in 2020 during COVID, but every other year we have.
Recommendation from the Capital Committee?
Capital Committee recommends unanimously.
All right, we'll go to the floor. Microphone to my left, please.
I move to amend this motion to read, I move to appropriate
Yeah, name and address again, just for the
Sorry,
record.
Jennifer Barrett, Whitcomb Road. I move to amend the motion to read, I move to appropriate $300,857.60, $300,000 from free cash and $857.60 from the Transportation Network Company funds for the purpose of maintaining roadways in Boxborough, including all costs incidental and related thereto.
I'm not hearing a second. It's been moved and seconded. 3 minutes to explain why.
We currently have $3.2 million in free cash. This is your tax money that has been turned back or raised above needs. After all of the other articles that have gone through this meeting, we have about $2.4 million, which according to the Finance Committee report at the end of the warrant is 8.3% of our levy. Additionally, in that same section, it says that the goal is to keep the free cash amount above 5%. If we were to change this to free cash, we would still have 7.2% of our levy in free cash. I would like to know why we are continuing to pay interest and borrowing costs on money that we have on projects that we could pay cash for.
A recommendation from the Finance Committee.
The recommendation is that we continue to finance this from bonding.
Recommendation from the Select Board.
The Select Board is really concerned about how close we are to the levy limit and having the ability to run our town next year. So by bonding this, it maintains our free cash balance so that next year perhaps we can move a little further from the override that we think we're going to have. So this is about preserving resources and prudent fiscal management.
Recommendation from the Capital Committee. Do we have one?
Capital Committee recommends stick with bonding.
All right. We'll go to the floor for questions and comments on the motion. This is on the amendment to change the source of the funding only. Seeing no one at a microphone, all in favor of the amendment? Oh, okay, it's an amendment, it only requires majority. All in favor of the amendment, raise your green cards. All those opposed, raise your green cards. The amendment fails. We're back to discussion on the motion as originally made on the screen. Back to the floor again. I guess you're
I do have another
first in
question.
line. You can question the original motion.
I'd like to ask council why the town continues to add the Transportation Network Company funds to this warrant article every year, if that is required.
I'm not sure I can answer that question. It's not, we don't make the decision as to what the funding sources are, so I'd have to defer to the town administrator as to, or the FinCom.
Do you guys want to take it? Why we use TNC?
I think it's just historical. It started many years ago, I think. It seems appropriate that transportation network funds go to road funding, to me. It's just a historical precedent.
We get our TNC money through the state. It actually comes from the from transportation such as Uber and Lyft for the purpose of upkeep of roads that those transportation resources are using. So it kind of makes sense to the town that it goes back into road maintenance along with the for that purpose.
So my comment is based from the Division of Local Services, local finance opinion dated 2022. They declared that starting with the distributions received on or about June of 23, if the amount of the distribution to a city or town is $25,000 or less, the chief executive officer may expend the funds for the statutory purposes without further appropriation. So I believe that actually falls under the purview of the Board of Selectmen, or the Select Board. Okay. So just because we've always done it doesn't mean the law hasn't changed and been updated. We can continue to move forward with less odd dollars.
Microphone to my right, please.
Dick.
That's a statement. We don't have to answer every statement or question or hypothetical or rhetorical.
Dick,
right.
Dick Wagman, 86 Leonard Road. You've talked about this as something we've done since 2015 to effectively, it seemed like, catch up on our maintenance and stuff like that. I was wondering, is it anticipated that there will ever come a time that we will declare that we have completely caught up and we won't have to do this? Or is this expected to be a bonding requirement every year forever?
Ed Kukala, are you psyched to come up and answer this question or what? Are we allowed to give you a list of where we live and what we want you to fix? No.
I wish I had a good answer for you, but as we all know, that due to the frost we get in the ground, I guess is a good way to put it, that the pavement does not last maybe 15 years, even with general maintenance done to the road. I mean, we do try to crack seal to keep the water out of the cracks in the winter because that causes more issues with the freezing and thawing during the winter. And as many of you may have noticed that in the last few years, due to what climate change is, we seem to be getting a lot more rain during the winter. And that plays havoc on the roads. Some of these roads that you might drive down now, and I've noticed it on Liberty Square, in the last few years, that road is starting to deteriorate even more than it has just a couple of years ago. If I had to guess, if no maintenance was done on a road, maybe 15 years at a max. Just the general driving over a road, whether it's a truck or a car, is detrimental to pavement. There's nothing you can do about that. So to answer your question, I believe the town is going to have to do this to continue with the road maintenance. Right now, we spend about $500,000 or $600,000 a year between the town and the state to do maybe 2 to 3 miles of road a year. So we have about 36 miles, so if we do, say we do 3, that's 12 years. If we don't maintain any other roads with that money, the road we did at the beginning is now probably going to be in need of getting some milling and resurfacing done just to get it back to something that is more drivable.
Well, I'm certainly not suggesting that you don't do maintenance. It's clear cut that's required to be done. It seems like you could make a reasonable guess as to what an appropriate maintenance schedule would be, given that, as you say 15 years or something like that is a reasonable time for the thing to last. And it seems like we ought to be budgeting that amount of money every year so that we're sort of keeping up with what we expect things would be, and then only have to do extraordinary things for if we have some truly horrible winter or something like that.
Yes, we probably could do that. And some of the seminars and classes I've taken, they do that, and I wasn't ready for a question like this, but they do show that how, if you don't do anything, how they'll show the maintenance of the road over time, and if you don't do anything, how it just drops off. And there are treatments out there that allow you to maintain a road, you know, at an extended period of time without really getting into that full depth reclamation or reconstruction of the road to make it last. They do work, but what happens is, you know, when you pave a road, maybe in 2 or 3 years we start doing some crack sealing. You notice in some of the roads, Guggen's a good example, is it looks like the whole road is crack sealed. When you get to that point, there's another step you should be taking, which would be to do a thin lift overlay. And it's not cheap. None of this is cheap anymore because of the cost of the oil that's put into the pavement. And what happens is you see this being done on a road that you saw was only paved 4 or 5 years ago, and then you get residents who say, my road hasn't been touched in 10 years. Why are they doing this to this road? And you don't have a good answer because you want to say what I'm talking about, but they're not going to understand that because, as we all know, we pay taxes in order to have our roads maintained. And at some point you think, my road's going to get paved. We do have a list, and if anybody does bring it up, I haven't got it on the towns on our website, DPW's website, because I wanted to make sure that this $300,000 went through so I could do the roads that I had planned for this coming fiscal year. But as soon as tonight's over, if this does get passed, then that list will go up, and that'll be the 5-year plan for the paving. But there are steps, and there are numerous steps in order to try to make a pavement last 20 years. And it doesn't come cheap, but then you're neglecting the ones that actually could use a lot of work, and those roads are getting worse over time. So the $500,000 we get will do about, let's see, if right now probably 2 to 3 miles if we just do a mill and resurface, which is a step in that process, and that's where we are now with a lot of our roads. We're not at a point where there needs to be reconstruction because the roads are in pretty good shape. And when we did have a company come in and look at them, they were pretty surprised that we were up in the 3.5 out of 5 because most communities don't get enough money to do what they need to do. In this town, you know, when I came here, I was shocked that they were given more to maintain the roads than Mass DOT was to give to the roads, which was about $200,000. So I'd love to be able to have that process of going through on a road and doing the maintenance to try to make it last 20 years. But then I'm going to be neglecting roads that need some pretty good maintenance, and then having residents complain that this road wasn't, hasn't been touched, but you're doing all this maintenance on another road that was paved just years ago. So, you could put a number together, but I don't think, you could be talking $1 million a year to help do that maintenance and keep up with the maintenance. But at some point, pavement fails. There's no getting around that. And with New England weather, you'll never get away from that. You'd have to move down south if you didn't want anything done to your pavement.
Clearly, pavement's always going to fail, and it also seems evident that some roads are going to demand more frequent service than others, and some will require more heavy stuff. I don't dispute any of that. What I'd like to see is a more consistent plan that lets us deal with the totality of these things so that you could plan to do the roads which are going to fail more quickly, more often, do the ones that are going to fail less quickly, but say every 10 years or whatever the number you mentioned on someone else when the time comes, and have enough to plan for it, because we know darn well we're going to get crummy winters and heavy floods and stuff like that. And it seems to me we shouldn't be thinking of pushing it off into the indefinite future with bonds on all of this. It seems to me it's something we ought to be planning for as an ongoing basis for our budget. If the state isn't going to give us more money, and that's unfortunate, but so it goes, then we should be thinking in terms of taking care of the rest ourselves. I, for one, stand here in favor of our roads being darn good, and I root for that. Thank you.
All right, microphone to my left, please.
Andrew Tavolacci, 617 Old Harvard Road. This is more of a question just because of my ignorance as to how this is done. But the warrant mentions, crack sealing, fog sealing before undertaking a full paving project. But where does the money come from to handle the negative effects of water on the roadways? Like, for instance, installing culverts, installing storm drains, installing barriers at places where the water table is right at the level of the road itself. Where does that money come from? Because it doesn't look like it's included here for that purpose. I'm just curious, is that another bond, like, in order to do that kind of work? Where does that?
No, it comes from the same pot.
Same fund?
Unfortunately, yes. So,
Okay.
you probably, it's very rare that you'll see additional basins go in on any roads. Most of our roads are supposed to be country drainage, where everything sheets off the road, but over time, as you know, that everything builds up on the edges of the roads, and water has nowhere to go, so it tries to find a low spot and it sits in the road. And we're not allowed to just put basins in at any place. That we have to go through a process to get that approved, because we can't just put water on private property or put that water back into a stream without getting approval to do that.
But you do maintain what we have.
But we do maintain what we have, yes,
Okay,
which is
thank you.
about 540 basins in town. And then with water up on the roads, up near the roads, there are a couple that are right next to the road, but that has nothing to do with putting barriers up. It has to do with beavers, and that's an ongoing issue. Depot Road down by the tracks is a good place for that. Burroughs Road on the west part, that's the issues that most DPWs deal with, is getting a way to, managing the beavers. I don't want to say anything else, but all right, so, we have had, I believe we've had some trapping done out on Depot Road.
Ed, I think you've answered the question already.
But just the.
All right, I'll stop.
Yeah.
Just to follow up, there are areas where the water table is at the road level. So if you were to divert the water, I understand you can't put it onto somebody's personal property, but is it the responsibility of that resident or that homeowner whose property happens to be below the road level to take the water from the road onto their property?
No, we're not allowed to put, we're not supposed to put water on private property.
This is drifting past the four
It
corners at
is.
this point. Can we get back to the article on the
Sure.
funding
Thank
for
you.
road maintenance? Okay. Microphone to my right, please.
Mark Barbadoro, 627 Old Harvard Road. I don't know much about how this gets funded, and in truth, I don't care, because we have something pretty incredible in our town, and we all take it for granted until you live or work in a town where they cannot afford to pave their roads. And you need a vehicle like Chief Kivlin's new four-wheel drive vehicle to drive around on them. And if we can afford it, whatever we are doing, I think we are doing it right because the quality of life, our property values are predicated upon the quality of the roads, and people don't even see it, they don't even understand it. But I was lucky enough to have my road redone, Old Harvard Road, recently, and I remember seeing DPW out there patching up old drainage culverts before the paving took place, and it's pretty awesome. So thank you. Please spend the money. If you need more money, we can take it out of the school budget. Oh, I can't say that.
I'm not sure if Liz or Jennifer were in line first. Do you guys?
I'm going to move the question. I do have a follow-up question, Mr. Kukla, sorry, Jennifer Barrett, Wickham Road. You just mentioned drainage. And I can't recall, has the west side of Burroughs been done recently? I know we did the east side.
That is in the next
That is
round.
in the next round?
Yep.
I don't know if any of you have driven past the end of Burroughs at Hill there and seen Lake Burroughs in the last 2 days. Is there a possibility in that plan to petition to the state to put some drainage and run it under the road into the fire pond right there while you have the road torn up?
That could be a possibility. I know I had spoken with them a couple of years back. I was just looking for a way to get that puddle off the road at the corner there. And the woman I met with and spoke with, I said, well, she asked me what my plan was because I can't run, they want me running the water down, all the way down the road on 111 or even off to the edge of the road. And I said, well, I was just thinking maybe of making a little retention basin between the road and the wall and getting it in there. And she had no issue with that. It probably would have to be collaborative. That's something that Mass DOT would be slow at doing, and it would probably keep us from doing the work there in this fiscal year, coming up fiscal year. Because even with anything they do is not something that they just jump on. It requires contracts, and they put contracts together to do the work. So that's why, sometimes you'll see a state vehicle patching potholes, but a lot of times, and just recently, they did a bunch of broken parts of the road with a contractor, and they put a contract together and have them do it, and that's what they would do with something like this. So it would mean that part of that road, unless I cut it short, would not get done this fiscal year, most likely.
I just was curious on the process and the timing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Microphone to my right, please.
Liz Folks, 155 Stowe Road. I move the question.
Moved and seconded. I'm not sure there was anybody else in line, but we'll go through it anyway. It went away. All right. We'll do them. All right. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of stopping debate now? Raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed? All right. That passes by the 2/3. We've stopped debate. We're now voting on the motion under Article 40. All in favor? Raise your green cards. All opposed? Raise your green cards. That passes by the 2/3 required. We're on to motion under Article 41, Select Board.
I move that the town appropriate the sum of $160,000 to sandblast and paint the frame of a DPW dump truck, and to replace the existing dump spreader body, including all costs incidental and related thereto, and to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the select board, is hereby authorized to borrow said amount pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Sections 7 and 8, or any other enabling authority, and to issue notes and bonds of the town therefore.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation, Select Board.
Board recommends unanimously for the reasons printed in the warrant.
Finance Committee recommendation.
The Finance Committee recommends we applaud the Department of, the Director of Public Works for repairing and refurbishing the truck instead of looking to purchase a new vehicle.
Recommendation from the Capital Committee.
The Capital Committee recommends unanimously.
Questions from the floor. Microphone to my left, please.
Question for Mr. Kukula?
Ed, you're back up.
I understand refurbishing a truck for use if it's still in good repair in the engine, and I do support actually doing it this way rather than just replacing. However, I wonder if you really truly expect this truck to last the 9 years of the prospective bonding that this is being called for.
I do. The truck was purchased in 2009. It only has 31,000 miles on it, give or take, a little more than that, and only has 3,600 engine hours, which is what we really talk about when we talk about these bigger trucks, not the mileage. These engines in these bigger trucks can go 200,000-300,000 miles if they're maintained, and my guys do a great job of maintaining these trucks. I went out and got a cost to replace this truck, and it was $342,000. The last truck I just got in, which I had put in for, was just at COVID, and we got a bid of $210,000. 5 years later, they're asking for $342,000 for the same truck. So after I spoke with my foreman, I said, "You think we could do with refurbishing this?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "It only gets used for plowing." He goes, "We have enough trucks if we need dump trucks. I mean, we can obviously put our dump body on it if we need to." And I asked him about the engine hours, and he said, "Yeah." He goes, "That's like having a new vehicle almost with 3,600 engine hours." So he took a look at the frame of the back of the truck, and it had rust on it. And it's not where you're seeing pieces of big metal missing from it. It's pretty much surface rust that can be sandblasted off. And I said, "Oh, great." So I said, "Let's see if we can go about it that way, and it'll save the town about $150,000, give or take." And if this is only used, for plowing, which, knock on wood for us for me anyway, is that we don't seem to get as much snow as we used to. And so it's actually helping us with these vehicles and having them last a little longer. So Jennifer, I don't have an issue with the vehicle lasting the required time for the bond if it's maintained. We plan on using a stainless steel body. All of our other trucks do. And if we do need a new one, we can take off the stainless steel body because those things are upwards of $130,000. The steel body's $100,000, but that'll rust, and it isn't even worth debating $30,000 between the two. So if we did, and I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if we did need one within year 9 or before the bond came up, we're going to save that money because we can just reuse that stainless steel body. But from where I'm standing, I don't think there is going to be an issue with that truck lasting past the bond.
Okay. I just want people to be aware that bonding does mean it is part of your raise and appropriate taxes next year or the year after when that does come through. So this is actually technically, in the underlying vote, a raise and appropriate.
Seeing no one at a microphone, all in favor of the motion under Article 41, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by the two-thirds majority required. Two-thirds required. All right, now we are on to Article 43, motion by Select Board.
Article 43, adopt Mass General Law, Chapter 40, Sections 42G, 42H, 42I, 42J, and 42K, water line extension. I move that the town vote to accept the provisions of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 40, Sections 42G, 42H, 42J, 42I, and 42K, and to further authorize the town, in accordance with Chapter 188 of the Acts of 2024 and all other authority pertaining, to levy special assessments on benefited properties using any of the methods authorized by law for the whole or part of the cost of constructing a water distributing system to bring drinking water to certain Boxborough properties west of I-495, as described in the municipal agreement between Boxborough and Littleton.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation from the Select Board, please.
The Select Board recommends unanimously approval of this article will permit Boxborough to apply property betterments needed to fund the cost of the water line extension. This step is required to meet the terms defined in the IMA with Littleton, which was executed by the Select Board on June 20th, 2023. Without timely approval of these General Law Chapter 40 sections, the Boxborough assessor and tax collector cannot collect the fees required under the IMA.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
We recommend unanimously.
Recommendation from the Water Resources Committee.
Yes, Les Fox, 187 Hill Road, Chair of the Water Resources Committee. The Water Resources Committee recommends unanimously 7-0-0 by vote of our committee. The Littleton Water Department water line extension will provide much needed clean drinking water to the western part of town, west of I-95. This article will enable the funding via betterments as required by the intermunicipal agreement. So the whole plan is to do this on the betterments that will be applied to the benefit of properties. The town has no mechanism to do that until we adopt these sections of Mass General Law. So that's just why we're doing this. It's all been part of the plan to fund that project, which is very well far along, by the way.
Microphone to my left, please.
Cheryl Mahoney, 188 Liberty Square Road. Mr. Moderator, I believe I need to ask a question through you to council. Based on the defeat of Article 1, the failure to meet the two-thirds threshold on Article 1 from Monday night, does that impact the ability for the town to construct this proposed project?
No, I don't see it as having any impact on this particular project.
Thank you.
Microphone to the right, please.
Yeah, there's a item under the use table, I believe it's called public utilities, something of that nature, and I think that this probably falls squarely in it. But I did also want to reassure everybody who seems to be terribly concerned that STM1 didn't pass. Planning Board's going to take it up and fix it.
Seeing no one at a microphone, all in favor of the motion under Article 43, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That passes by the two-thirds required. All right, we are now on to a series of motions that are zoning related by the Planning Board. Rebecca, do you have a motion? Article 44.
I move to pass over this article.
Is there a second? Moved and second to pass over. Rebecca, explanation?
The Board of Health and Water Resources Committee provided constructive and positive feedback, which requires additional time for review. We expect to return to the fall town meeting with more information and a slightly revised article.
All right, and Finance Committee recommendation? Pass over?
Finance Committee recommends unanimously.
Okay, so this is a motion to pass over. If we approve this, it'll effectively just kill this article for discussion at this town meeting. Sounds like the intent is to come back with a new and improved version. So all in favor of passing over, raise your green cards. Cards down, all opposed. It's to pass over, so that passes by a majority. Now on to motion under Article 45.
I move that the town vote to amend Section 8.2 and 9.2 of the Boxborough zoning bylaw by striking Sections 8.2 in its entirety inserting a new section 8.2 and inserting in section 9.2. Terms defined, the floodplain overlay district definitions, all as set forth below, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the zoning bylaw be permitted in order to be in compliance with the numbering format of the existing zoning bylaw.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation from the planning board. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's a presentation. Please proceed.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the time tonight. We're here to talk about floodplain bylaws, and where most zoning bylaws have long-term and forward-thinking impacts on your bottom line dollar, the floodplain bylaw and the floodplain district affect you here today. Communities across Massachusetts work, and I should say across the United States, work to comply with the standards set forth by FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Provider. And in our case, we do so every 7 or so years. This past round took a little bit longer due to the COVID pandemic, but the state has been working for many years now to develop a compliant model bylaw, which we've presented here tonight. Compliance is necessary for residents and property owners to maintain their flood insurance at reasonable rates. You'll hear me use the term the National Flood Insurance Provider, and that is a public provider of flood insurance rates. Those communities who choose not to comply ultimately have to seek private flood insurance. You, the property owners, if we did not have a compliant bylaw, would have to seek private flood insurance, which oftentimes can cost 25% or more to your bottom line dollar. For Boxborough in particular, this is really important. We all know what beautiful wetlands we have in the community, and wetlands directly correlates to your floodplain. In 2020, the state developed its model bylaw, which was developed to bring forward communities and encapsulate those pieces that were missing from the State Wetlands Protection Act, the State Building Code, and local communities could then incorporate this model bylaw or some variation thereof to stay compliant. They worked hard to ensure that communities had a lighter lift to do so, and we even had a presentation from our district representative who helped develop that bylaw. Tonight, we're encouraging you to vote yes on Article 45, and the Planning Board voted unanimously to recommend this article in order to maintain your own flood insurance rates and stay compliant for the effective MAP date that is July of this year.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Finance Committee unanimously recommends.
Seeing no one at a microphone, all in favor of the motion under Article 45, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That carries by the 2/3 required. Motion under Article 46.
I move that the town vote to amend section 2.3 of the Boxborough zoning bylaw for the purpose of clarifying that review of all special permits must apply the special permit decision criteria identified in section 2.3.4, in addition to any other identified criteria with bold text to be inserted as follows, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the zoning bylaw be permitted in order that it be in compliance with the numbering format of the existing zoning bylaw.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation, Planning Board.
The Planning Board recommends 5-0 unanimously. The zoning bylaw, section 2.3, outlines the authority, public hearing process, application process, and decision considerations for the special permits in accordance with the Zoning Act, Mass General Law, Chapter 40A. The zoning bylaw, sections 4.4 through 4.12, also identifies several special permits for specific uses, such as special permits for restaurants or in specific zoning districts, for example, special permits in Town Center District, each of which may have decision criteria specific to that particular special permit. The proposed language would help to clarify that a review of all special permits must apply the special permit criteria, special permit considerations identified in section 2.3.4 decision, in addition to any other identified decision criteria. The only exception would be for non-conforming uses and structures which are governed by Mass General Law 40A, Section 6.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Finance Committee recommends for the reasons listed in the warrant.
Seeing no one at a microphone, all in favor of the motion under Article 46, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That carries by the 2/3 required. Motion under Article 47, please.
I move that the town vote to amend Section 4.2.2, Section 5.3 and 9 of the Boxborough zoning bylaw for the purpose of modifying the existing regulation of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, by deleting the strike-through text and inserting the bold text as set forth, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the zoning bylaw be permitted in order to be in compliance with the numbering format of the existing zoning bylaw.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation from the Planning Board.
Within recent memory of this town meeting, adopted its own changes to the bylaw and created an accessory dwelling bylaw. However, in August of 2024, the state, in the face of the housing crisis, adopted the Affordable Homes Act and provided its own language. And we need to be in compliance. This was a collaborative effort between Mark Barbadoro and the Planning Board to put together the wording that's before you. We will wait to see what further regulations come to see if there's any flexibility, but it does change what we adopted, which was previously 1,300 square feet or 40% of the existing dwelling, and this is 50% or 900 square feet, whichever is less. So it's somewhat more constrictive in terms of the actual size, but is the law of the land at the moment. So we are trying to stay within the state's guidelines.
Recommendation from the Finance Committee.
Finance Committee unanimously recommends.
Seeing no one at a microphone, all in favor of the motion under Article 47, right?
We have an amendment.
Oh, an amendment?
We have an amendment here for this. I don't know what the protocol is for that, but.
Okay. I was calling, I was in. We could hear the amendment.
Hear the amendment,
If
okay.
someone didn't get to a microphone in time, we'll back up 10 seconds and pretend they had a chance to get there.
Okay.
The amendment is,
I move to amend the Articles 47 by amending Section 4.2.2 sub A by inserting the language accessory dwellings as defined in 760 CMR 71.03 subsection 3B 2 by amending Section 4.2.2 sub I by inserting the language as defined in 760 CMR 71.0. Did I just go in a circle? 71.02, and by amending Section 5.3 sub A to replace the word single family with principal and replacing the word unit with as defined in 760 CMR 71.02.
is there a second? Moved and seconded to amend. Explanation, please, up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, everybody, and we apologize for the confusion. In a rare occurrence, the state's Attorney General's office did offer advanced review of these bylaws, and so the bylaw you see printed in your warrant had not had the opportunity for full review by the Attorney General. The Attorney General submitted that review to us, provided direct feedback, and the board held another public hearing to consider that feedback, at which they made these amendments to ensure the bylaw would be compliant with the new state standards.
Okay, that's explanation and recommendation from the planning board on the amendment.
Yeah, we voted unanimously for that amendment.
Recommendation from the finance committee.
Yes, we recommend.
All right, to the floor for discussion on the amendment. It's a motion on the amendment at this point. Microphone to my right. I think Gary was up
Yeah.
there, unless Mark, were you already ahead in the line, Mark?
I want to let him go if he wants to talk to the amendment. If not, I'll talk to the.
Yeah, well, okay, that's why. We're talking to the amendment now.
So Gary Kushner, 158 Flag Hill Road. What I heard about the amendment sounds reasonable, but the guidelines we've been over the many decades I've been coming to town meeting is we don't approve amendments on town meeting floor for zoning bylaws. It might make sense, but in my opinion, we should pull this back then and come back in special town meeting when it's no longer an amended to the zoning, just so we follow our process. Thank you.
Microphone to my left, please.
Priya Sundaram, 120 Patchell Road. That was pretty similar because you mentioned about something 7.2, whatever. We just had an issue from 1990s where things were all messed up. I don't want this to be amended on the floor and us not knowing what exactly is in there. I'm not comfortable with this amendment.
Microphone to my right, talking about the amendment still.
Mark Barbadoro, 627 Old Harvard Road. I understand the concern. The amendments were based on the response from the Attorney General's office. So what we did was we took the Attorney General's advice in order that if we voted to approve it at this meeting, the Attorney General wouldn't strike it when the municipal division reviews it later. That's the reason we wanted to move forward. The ADU law was in effect since Groundhog Day. So we have, it is already the law of the land. What we're trying to do is get our bylaw in line with the Affordable Homes Act in Chapter 40A so that people will be able to read our bylaw and understand how to use it, and so that our building inspector will be able to read the bylaw and understand how to use it. And all of this has been evolving, and that's that the state came out with 760 CMR 71, which is the ADU CMR. They came out with that after we drafted our bylaw. Everything has been evolving. It's now all settled into place. The Attorney General's office has reviewed the bylaw, recommended changes in order to make it pass, and the Planning Board has just requested an amendment that I strongly suggest we take.
Microphone to my left, we're talking about the amendment.
Dick Wagman, 86 Leonard Road. As a result of your explanation, I now understand why it is that you've chosen to amend this, but all I heard was an incredible string of numbers and letters that, to me at least, who am not familiar with the zoning bylaws and all that, had absolutely no meaning. Can you give a 1 minute or less summary of what this amendment actually does so I can actually have a vague feeling of whether I should go along with it, please?
I'm not sure I can answer it, in great detail, but just maybe if you understand the process, that the state would enact a statute and then might deliberate further and offer regulations. And that CMR reference up there on the board is the Code of Mass Regulations. So that's where the fine details are. And that's what we were trying to incorporate into the wording that we had, which was otherwise from the statute.
So what basic effect will this have on the base motion compared to what we're going to amend it to? How is it going to change?
Well, we were trying to comply with the statute, and in the recent process at the state level, they have adopted regulations. So now we're trying to incorporate their regulations into our bylaw, and that's what the amendment was about. So I think, as Mark very helpfully described, it makes it easier for people to understand and easier for the town code enforcement to implement.
Can you give me, say, just one regulation that thus got put in as a result of this?
For
Anything?
instance, I'd defer to Mark Barbadoro, because he's one of the guys that implements it, so, if that's possible.
Would you like me to answer the question, Mr. Moderator?
If you can shed light and help answer this, yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to shed some light on it. So one of the changes that we made, and I understand that there's a bunch of numbers and subsections struck and added. One of the changes that we made that is in plain language is that 760 CMR requires that an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit, if it's detached from the structure, that it be allowed to meet the accessory setback. It's not a choice of ours. The state created that. The governor signed it. The CMR is there. What we're trying to do is amend our bylaw to say, if you want an ADU on your property, it can now meet the accessory structure setback. Because if we don't do that, a person can come in and apply anyway and request to put their structure there, and then the building inspector could be confused and deny that person, and then we get into a legal battle and we spend a lot of money needlessly. So my only comment about the numbers, the string of numbers and strikes and adds, is that if you didn't read what's there and you didn't understand that, then don't be afraid that you're not understanding the changes to it, because the people who worked on it, 3 months, was the planning board and the chair of the ZBA. And we worked very hard to make the bylaw comply. And I understand the concern. I don't think I can go through the whole thing start to finish. I could if the moderator wants to let me spend 20, 25 minutes. I can explain all about ADUs to you, but I don't know if you want to do that.
I don't want to hear
No,
25 minutes.
We've had two
of stuff.
prior town meetings where we've discussed ADUs in great detail, so this is about this specific
You have answered my
amendment.
question very well. Thank you.
All right, we were at the left, we're going back to the right.
So, Chris Dowdy, Liberty Square Road. So I just wanted to paraphrase. So I think the intent of this article was to get in compliance with what state law was going to be. We obviously want input. If we get input from the state AG, that's helpful to confirm that we are actually compliant and we did what we intended to do. It looks like this amendment now is we got feedback from the AG, so we've made the appropriate changes. If we got that feedback early enough that those changes could have happened before this even got printed in the warrant, I'm fairly confident the planning board would have done it that way. It's just the timing of, to print these things, to print however many hundred or thousand of them, there's lead time there. So unfortunately, the feedback from the AG didn't get to the planning board until after everything went to the warrant, to print and the warrant. So this is to reconcile everything so that we don't get in, so we don't have to deal with further legal issues and have to then amend again and bring this back to town meeting again next year.
That's a good synopsis of it.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Okay, good. Glad I'm getting the gist there right. The only other question I had was analogous to the wetlands bylaw that we needed to amend to be in compliance, or there was going to be problems. We might not be able to get flood insurance. Are there any other similar deadlines for this, or is it just simply we should be in compliant because it's been active for months?
Well, your summary just articulated what a moving target it was at the time. Mark, the target has now stopped. I mean, they can always make amendments and elaborations, but for the time being, it doesn't look like we're expecting any at the state level. Is that correct, Mark? Barbadoro, sorry, if I may ask.
Mark, if you can shed light on this again, thank you.
All right, Mark Barbadoro. Yes, it is unlikely that we will have changes on the legislative end. There will probably be changes going down the road through the years on the CMR, and there's going to be legal cases that are going to refine the limits of the ADU law, but we can't wait for court cases to come out. That happens with all bylaws. That's how case law is developed over many, many years. That's going to happen here because the state moves so fast. They moved incredibly fast with their system, and they rushed all the communities to catch up. And we're behind already. I went to the select board and told them about it, and we tried to move through this process as rapidly as possible to stay ahead of it. We had a special town meeting that roughly aligned with Groundhog Day, but that had to move, and it didn't make sense to leave one article on. So we, pushed it to regular town meeting, and in the ensuing months, they created a code of Massachusetts regulation on the subject, which we had to modify our bylaw in order to comply with. But like I said, the case law is going to shake out over a period of years because it was rushed. Thanks.
Mark volunteered. Microphone to my left.
I still got a minute.
Oh, you still have time left? Continue, please.
I was just going to say, so I understand that our longstanding tradition of drafting or amending zoning bylaws on the floor of town meeting is dangerous and fraught with unintended consequences. I think this is probably an exception to that because the entire point of the article was to get everything in line with the state. We got feedback from this, or the planning board got feedback from the state in the interim of between needing to go to print and today. So while I completely understand and I support that, let's not do zoning things on the fly without considering the consequences. Feedback from the state attorney general, I think, is due consideration of potential consequences. So I think I'm okay with this, but I do support the overall policy of not drafting zoning on the floor. Thanks.
Microphone to my left, please.
Priya Sundaram, 120 Patchell. I still think, does this article have to be passed today for it to be valid, or can it wait till the fall town meeting?
I recommend that the town pass this bylaw. Failure to do so will require our building commissioner to enforce erroneous laws and risk litigation to the town.
I still feel strongly that amending this on the floor when there's hardly, less than 100 people, and this is a zoning bylaw, a lot more people need to be having input, and they didn't know there's going to be an amendment on the floor, so I think it's not appropriate for this to happen here today. We are probably going to have a fall town meeting for the planning. That's when I think it should come. If people had known maybe there's going to be an amendment to a zoning bylaw, maybe more people would have showed up. I think this is not right for the town to do it now, especially when we have had zoning issues and errors, which has caused a lot of problems for this town. I think this needs to wait till the fall town meeting.
Microphone to my right, please.
John Fallon, 500 Paddock Lane. One of the people who suggested for many years that we not amend on the floor, but I don't think this covers. I think we have a very simple choice. Either we pass this amendment and we pass a bylaw that the Attorney General will accept, or we don't pass this amendment and then we might as well not pass the rest because the Attorney General is going to throw it out. So I think we have a very simple choice. We get with the program, we get with what the Attorney General wants, we get with current state law, or we basically live with the bylaw we have right now, which is illegal, which the building inspector can't enforce. So I don't think we really have a choice. I think we have to pass this amendment and we have to pass this bylaw, or we're just putting Mr. Wade and the building inspector in a really, really bad situation.
Microphone to my left, please.
Coleman Connolly, 152 Flag Hill Road. I would just like to ask for a clarification on the actual amendment here so that I think more people can understand what's going on here. From what I'm getting from the text that's on the screen in yellow, which is the amendment that we're voting on, all that this is doing is replacing existing definitions with definitions that have been approved by the State Attorney General's office. Could somebody from the Planning Board or perhaps the Land Use Director confirm that for me?
I think that's correct, and I think that distinguishes itself from people amending zoning from the floor. This is an amendment that incorporates into what we have adopted that complies with the state draft its own regulations generated by the state. So it's not us creating it on the fly.
Correct. And then also, I note in some of the other zoning articles in the warrant, there's some language about non-substantive changes to any particular thing. Would you consider that the changes we're making here, as they've been approved by the Attorney General, in order to substitute our definitions with a legally comprehensible and correct one according to the Attorney General's office, would also be considered that? In other words, are these changes actually constitutional of an amendment, or is this just a correction that the Attorney General's office has asked us to make?
It's not so much a correction as an elaboration at a detail level. One of the questions was asked, what is all this CMR business? If you just take that string of letters and numbers and you Google it, you will get a page that is much more finely detailed and will walk you through the steps that a building inspector would have to apply in enforcing this bylaw, or a guideline that an applicant would have to follow in trying to seek approval and make compliant construction. So it's an elaboration on the statute at a detailed level.
So, just to make this clear, we've already brought this bylaw, or some version of it, to town meeting once in the time that I've been a voter, and we sent it off to the Attorney General's office, and they rejected it. They've come up with new regulation in the meantime, and they've asked us to incorporate that regulation. I think that possibly the only correct course of action is for us to approve this amendment. I think that, with deference to what Mr. Fallon said, this is not a violation of the policy that we have held in town for a long time. I think that this is the only correct course of action, and I urge people to vote for the amendment. Thank you.
Microphone on my right again.
Mark Barbadoro, Old Harvard Road, newly paved road, wonderful. Alec, I have a procedural question. When the amendments were voted by the planning board, was that under a public hearing?
Yes.
So we held multiple days of public hearings, then we renoticed to do the amendments at a public hearing. Did we not have our special land use council vet the zoning bylaw prior to creating the initial amendments? Do you remember?
Yes,
I do.
it was
We did.
vetted going into special town meeting.
Yes. We had, so it has been vetted by our special land use council. The initial bylaw took multiple months of review publicly at public hearing. When the Attorney General came back and said there was a mistake, we reopened another public hearing, and then we drafted the bylaw. If people are that interested in the bylaw, they should not be learning about it on the floor of town meeting. The amendment was done at a public hearing at the planning board. So this isn't a bait and switch any more than anything else was. And right now, I don't want to revisit old ground, but for basis of comparison, as kindly as I can make it, STM 1 did not get vetted by any attorney, was voted on in a fortnight.
Beyond the corners, Mark.
Wow. Okay, that's beyond the corners. So other bylaws have taken far less scrutiny. That within the corners?
That's good enough.
All right, thank
The point was made. Microphone to my left, please.
Joe Stulpin, 198 Picnic Street. When was the language submitted to the Attorney General?
Around about January.
When did the response get submitted back to the town?
The Friday before the public hearing, which was held in March.
and they made a recommendation. Did this language come directly from the Attorney General?
No, the Attorney General cited the inaccuracies, and the approach that was taken was to simply cite back to the state's own regulations.
And was the amended language reviewed by the Attorney General and approved to be more in order?
No, the Attorney General does not offer a second review.
Thank you.
Seeing no one at a microphone, we will now vote on the amendment to Article 47 that has been made. It's an amendment, so it only requires a majority. So this is the change the language to what you see on the screen. All in favor of the amendment, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed to the amendment, raise your green card. The amendment passes by majority. We're now back to the original motion. Motion as amended, I should say. I'm sorry. Seeing no one at a microphone, all in favor of the motion as amended, raise your green cards. Cards down, all opposed. The motion as amended carries by the 2/3 required. No one has made a motion to adjourn, so we'll continue until there is one. So, Kristen, there's been a point of order about we made a procedural not to take up anything beyond 10:30. It's not 10:30 yet, so we don't need to talk about that, but there is the interest, an expressed interest in continuing. So when we get to 10:30, if we still haven't closed out, we can revisit that
Let's just get
procedural
this
motion.
done, kids. Let's just do it.
And another point of order, I was informed of the amendment. I just had confused which article number it went to, so my apologies to Alec and Rebecca for my lack of clarity there in terms of knowing what was happening next. So anyway, we're moving on. We have a motion under Article 47. 48, I'm sorry. Jeez,
47, yep.
This is where I got confused again, yeah.
I move, yeah, I got it, thank you. I move that the town vote to amend section 4.2.2, 5.3.
This is, okay, 48.
Oh, 48, good
All right,
lord.
it's getting late for everybody
Sorry,
here. We'll all
I'm
look at the
tired.
wrong pages.
I move that the town vote to amend section 6.6.3 of the Boxborough zoning bylaw by inserting the language shown in bold italics as follows, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the zoning bylaw be permitted in order to be in compliance with the numbering format of the existing zoning bylaw.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation from the planning board.
The planning board unanimously recommends passage of this article to restore the provision of the zoning bylaw as they were prior to the recodification on November 15, 2022. The board believes that the board believes we are thus exempt, and the town planner will submit such evidence to the Attorney General following approval of this article. For the reasons stated in the summary, the planning board encourages town meeting to approve this revision.
Recommendation from the finance committee.
Finance Committee unanimously recommends for the reasons listed above, or in the warrant.
Seeing no one at a microphone. All in favor of the motion on Article 48, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That motion carries by the 2/3 required. Motion under Article 49.
I move that the town vote to amend Articles 1 through 4 of the Boxborough zoning bylaw by approving the various corrections of the non-substantive amendments as shown in the two-page document entitled Proposed Zoning Bylaw Corrections on file with the town clerk's office, town planner's office, and viewable on the town of Boxborough's website at www.boxborough-ma.gov, and further that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the zoning bylaws be permitted in order that we be in compliance with the numbering format on the existing bylaw. Did I say that wrong? I did.
Point of
didn't I?
order with the motion, with the numbering.
I realized it as soon as it came out. I'm so sorry. So shall I
For the
make that one
record,
more time?
yeah, let's do it again for the record.
Okay. I move that the town vote to amend Articles 1 through 9 of the Boxborough zoning bylaw by approving the various corrections and non-substantive amendments as shown in the two-page document entitled Proposed Zoning Bylaw Corrections on file at the town's clerk office, town planner's office, and viewable on the town of Boxborough's website at www.boxborough-ma.gov. And further, that non-substantive changes to the numbering of the zoning bylaw be permitted in order to be in compliance with the numbering format in the existing zoning bylaw.
Moved and seconded. Recommendation for the planning board.
The planning board recommends unanimously.
Recommendation from the finance committee.
The Finance Committee recommends for the reasons listed in the warrant.
Microphone to my left, please.
Steve Jeffries, 286 Sergeant Road. In light of some of the discussion we had on the first night about unintended changes in language to zoning laws, when I look at the second bullet point here, editing, sentence structure, word choice, and paragraph formatting. Okay, so how, I'm just curious about what process have you gone through to ensure that we haven't lost something important like municipal building permitted in various places. So, right, I mean, I have to admit myself, I haven't reviewed all this stuff. So what process have you used to ensure that nothing got dropped on the floor that we'll miss later? Or, that's the question.
So that is this process by which we meticulously went section by section and over the course of about 3 years curated a list wherever we found a minor inaccuracy, where it points to the wrong place, where there's a comma misplaced, where a 4 should be a 5, and we curate that list, and then we come to you when it's substantial enough to populate about 2 pages, and we bring that forward as one bulk motion as opposed to occupying several motions over several years.
And has that list, the set of changes, been reviewed in a public hearing?
Yes. In fact, it was reviewed at several working group sessions of the board, I believe at least 7 different occasions prior to coming to public hearing.
Thank you.
Cheryl, you getting in line? Okay.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on the gentleman's comment. Cheryl Mahoney, Liberty Square Road. The question, and correct me if I'm outside of the four corners, he did bring up Article 1 from Monday night. I mean, this, and it's also in the recommendation that this is a living document. How often do you find missing words?
Missing words.
To the second bullet point.
Once or twice a year, we'll find something missing.
Okay, even though when you did the recodification and you hired a consultant to reform these several years ago, you're still finding errors in this living document, correct?
Yes.
And the assumption is you will continue to find errors as this is a living document, potentially.
Yes, every zoning bylaw, regardless of how recently it's recodified, does have errors in it.
Thank you.
Point of inquiry, am I allowed to talk about STM1?
Do you have a question about Article 49, a comment or a question? People are referring back because of what is
all right,
an
I just
apparent
wondered if
error.
I was allowed to refer back. All right, I won't refer back. Instead, I'll just simply state that, first of all, changes and mistakes occur all the time. Through the years, the planning board reviews and the ZBA reviews the bylaw, and they find something that doesn't work in context, right? Context always matters. So when you are in that process, that iterative process of constantly rereading the bylaw and rereading it, you will find things that don't work. Then you bring them forward. Do we know that there may be an application of the bylaw where it may not be applicable or it might have an outcome that was unexpected? You know, it's going to happen. The point is that this is an iterative process that has taken decades. And I'm afraid to bring it up, but 33 years ago, a recodification took place, for example, and at that time, one word in a term changed, and the general meaning stayed the same. But what happened was, 2 years later, they created a special definition intentionally to change it. And then 30 years after that, people came back and were surprised that they couldn't do the
All right,
things
we all
that they used to
understand the
do.
example.
Am I going on too long? I'm sorry.
Yeah, well,
Do you understand the example? Great.
I
Thank
think everybody understands what happened on Monday night and why this article, yeah. We heard that.
Cindy Markowitz, Meadow Lane. I was part of the board for the last 2 years, or 6 years actually, and we work with the zoning bylaw all the time. Some of the typographical errors and things have been because we've added amendments since the last recodification, which was, 2 or 3 years ago. So again, it's a living document. We're continually adding. We're adding several amendments tonight. You can see how precise the language needs to be in order to reference back. We try to avoid having circular references, section references to state law, federal law. There's a lot in the zoning bylaw. We work with it all the time. We're constantly finding minor things, and this is really just an effort to collect those things, as Alex said, over the last couple of years to make it a substantive enough change to bring it in aggregate to town meeting tonight. These are very minor ministerial things. There's nothing that will change the outcome of any particular bylaw. These are just corrections. Thank you.
Seeing someone at a microphone, we have a microphone.
All right,
Left.
Priya Sundaram, 120 Patchell. My question is, we just had a zone, if the wording is wrong, right? Or if there's something dropped off, is our building inspector still doing something that is not accurate?
That's a rhetorical question.
I'm asking Alec, will that be something that could happen?
I'm going to ask you to rephrase the question.
So we were just talking about things where there can be errors, words left out. So we don't know, maybe there's something that is left out here, right? Yes, it's a hypothetical question, but could that lead to our building inspector enforcing that, making a mistake?
From time to
You can say you don't know, if that's an answer.
anyone can make mistakes.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure, because I know in the prior ones that it could lead to mistakes. This can also lead to mistakes. Thank you.
Mark Barbadoro, 627 Old Harvard Road. Deep breath. I'm going to channel Mary Broland, and I move the question.
Wow. All right, is there a second? Moved and seconded that we stop debate now? Yeah. Credit where credit is due. It's been moved and seconded that we stop debate. That requires the 2/3 to do so. All in favor of stopping debate now, raise your green cards. All opposed, raise your green cards. Okay, that carries by the 2/3. We're now voting on the motion on Article 49, language cleanup. All in favor, raise your green cards. Cards down. All opposed, raise your green cards. That carries by the 2/3 required.
Thank you. You ready?
Ms. Hilberg, could I have a motion to dissolve?
I move to dissolve the May 12th, 2025 Boxborough Annual Town Meeting.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. That carries by the majority needed. Thank you for coming. Thanks for your attention. Thanks for your participation. Have a safe evening.